Welcome into the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. Have a very interesting show for you today, folks. You know, justice systems vary from around the world, and a lot of times in our second segment, Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals, I know a lot of you have questions as when we address different stories from around the world, and you say, I wonder how that justice system works in different parts of the world. One of the ones that fascinates me, we talk about Scotland Yard, we talk about the UK, and we talk about England. And I read a really fascinating book over the weekend. It's called A Straightforward Guide to Catching a Killer, a reference guide to murder investigation past and present. It's written by Stephen Wade, and our guest today, Stuart Gibbon. Now, Stuart Gibbon is a very distinguished guest. I think more distinguished than I deserve, that's for sure. Stuart Gibbon is a former police officer who served for 30 years in the Metropolitan Police in East Midlands. A large part of his career was spent as a detective at various ranks. As a DCI, he was seconded to the inaugural East Midlands Special Operations Unit as a senior investigating officer, which is a high rank. We'll find out exactly how high here in a minute. Leading murder investigations. He now runs a consultancy service called GIB Consultancy to help writers with their police procedures. He also appears on TV as a policing expert and has featured in a number of true crime documentaries, including 999, Killer on the Line, Deadly Women, and A Killer in My Village. Let's welcome in to True Crime Tuesday, Stuart Gibbon. Hi, Stuart. How are you?
Hi, Tim. How are you today?
Doing very well. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program. I love this book, and I know that you've made this book as a research companion for crime writers and readers. But I encourage our audience to go out and get this book, because a lot of times, and I'll tell you, Stuart, between you and I, we were talking off air a little bit, a lot of our listeners are hungry for more knowledge as to how different policing systems work throughout the world and how the criminal justice system works around the world. Tell me, in just a brief synopsis, with your job as an SIO, do you find it different from the way a detective or a detective superior may work here in America, or a captain may work in a police force here?
Yeah, from what I can gather, Tim, it is very different. Yeah, I think our job as a you call it an SIO. I mean, the police in the UK and in London in particular, we love acronyms. So if you've got a title, you've got an acronym. So an SIO, as you quite rightly said, is a senior investigating officer, and what that is generally as a detective, experienced, many years on the job. The training is pretty high intensity, as you can imagine, because they put you through without committing a murder, obviously, which will be a bit too far. They put you through a scenario where they put you under a lot of pressure. You don't get much sleep. You have to go in front of a mock press. You have to go to a mock court, give evidence, cross-examined. So it's really like investigating a real murder. And this is all part of your training. And once you get through that and you become officially an SIO, you are really the only person kind of in the UK who can be in charge of a murder case. That's throughout the whole of the UK. So you can imagine there's probably only 2, maybe 3 different ranks that can be an SIO. The one that I was a DCI. Okay. Without boring you too much and going into too much detail, it will be totally different to where you are and, of course, other countries. But just to give you a really brief flavour of it, your rank and file officer that patrols the streets, either in uniform or maybe when an officer's a detective, is a constable. That's the first rank. When you become trained as an officer, a police officer, you're a constable. Okay. And you might be a detective constable, which and the lovely acronym gives it DC. So if you hear the word DC, they're the feet on the ground. They're the real workers in my eyes. It's what I used to do many years ago, and that's where you learn your trade. If you were to get promoted one rank, you'd become a sergeant. Again, I'm sure you have either that rank or an equivalent rank where you are. Yep. It's 3 stripes on the arm. You become a sergeant. And of course, you can be a detective sergeant, which is a DS. So we shorten it to DS. Mm-hmm. Detective sergeants tend to manage little groups of DCs. So they still get their hands dirty. Mm-hmm. They still investigate pretty serious crime, but they don't do as much as the DCs in terms of investigative work because they're managers. Okay. Then you move on to a DI, which is a detective inspector. Mm-hmm. That's the next rank up. And as you move up the ranks, you're becoming more of a manager really than than a police officer. So I'm not saying I could throw my warrant card away and not need it anymore, because of course you do. But you feel a little bit like that sometimes, because you're actually in the office a lot more. You're managing a computer and staff rather than doing what you want to do, really, which is get out there and look into the eyes of the killers and that sort of thing. The next rank is a chief inspector, which is what I finished off as, which is a DCI. So it's kind of 3 or 4 ranks up the system. Most SIOs probably in the UK are DCI rank, Detective Chief Inspectors, and they are in charge of anything from, let's say, maybe 50 up to 100 more detectives and uniformed police officers who are investigating a murder. And yes, you do leave the station, but it will be fairly rare for a DCI to be kicking the door in, for them to be arresting and physically restraining someone. And also, which was frustrating for me, to be sitting opposite them in an interview room, looking into their eyes, because you don't do that sort of thing anymore as you go up the ranks. You're literally a manager that manages the whole thing. Now, I used to love to go out on raids because that was where I started it all. Yeah. So it's you can't, I'm not saying you can't do it, but a lot of senior SIOs won't do that. They want to be removed from it because you've got a lot of other work to do. And I liken an SIO to being the conductor of an orchestra, really. Okay. You know, you want to make sure the tune sounds good, and you don't want to drop the balls that you're juggling. But actually, you've got to rely on an awful lot of good men and women to get it done for you, and you just have to make sure that everything is going okay. How that compares really to in the States and other countries, I'd imagine it's pretty different, not just in terms of the ranks, but also probably the responsibilities as well. One of the places you do go, critically enough, is a crime scene, a murder scene. And I would always make sure I go to the scene and get all geared up with a forensic gear on and have a look at where this has happened. But having said that, I know some SIOs who didn't do that. They would get a briefing from video. They'd have a drone sent up and they'd do all that sort of thing. Then they'd sit in a conference room and they'd watch it all. But for me, there's nothing firsthand. You've got to go and smell, see, and take it all in, because someone can brief you as many times as they want, but unless you've actually been there, you haven't got those experiences, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So yeah, exactly. I think it's pretty different, to answer your question, really, about how detectives work and how they manage the murder cases. Obviously, the teams in the UK, apart from the bigger forces like the Metropolitan Police, maybe Manchester, maybe Birmingham, they're the big forces. Apart from those, I mean, one of the forces I used to be in when I moved away from London was a place called Lincolnshire, which is in the East Midlands. It's a huge county. It's about, I don't know, it's 200, 300 miles square geographically, with very few resources to police it. And our major crime team that investigated murders for many years made up of about 15 or 20 officers and staff, which isn't really a great deal when everybody's got lots of different roles to do. Right. Whereas in London, you've got specific regional teams now that deal with them, and there's many of them, and that they're like a well-oiled machine. If something happens, they know exactly what they need to do, and they just go and do it. But having said that, in London, an SIO can be dealing with anything from about 5 upwards of murders at one time. Obviously, they haven't all just happened, hopefully. They're dealing with them through the course of the criminal justice process. But until the case has been to court and that person has been either convicted or acquitted, there's still an awful lot of work to do. In fact, an awful lot of the work begins when someone is arrested and charged with a case. People think, it's about finding out who's done it and catching them. It is about that. But once that's happened, the big pressure then is to get it right. To prove or disprove that this person is actually the killer, and to do it to a standard that satisfies a jury in a Crown Court who are going to convict this person because the evidence is sufficient.
One of the things I'm impressed with, Stuart, as I read the book is how thorough the investigation really is. It seems to me that here in the States, our police departments, our sheriff's departments, all the way to different areas of law enforcement, are so overwhelmed with crime that there are areas, and I'm not blaming or I'm not shaming here, but it seems like there are areas where they're so overwhelmed that maybe there isn't enough areas to be thorough. Now, let me ask you this. Is it a matter of staffing, or is it a matter of crime rate in your perspective. I'll put it that way. Do you feel like in your country you have a lower crime rate so you're able to focus, or do you staff properly so you're able to process cases correctly?
I think it's a little bit of both, Tim, a little bit of both. You couldn't disregard either of what you said there, because you bang on. One of the big issues that we have is resources. But what we tend to find, I think, certainly in the majority of cases, is that what they call them, murder investigation teams or major crime teams. Again, the police they like to call things different names. So there isn't one name for the whole of the UK for these units, which is frustrating, especially for a researcher trying to find something out. But they are normally staffed very, very well. Where we see the resource issue is at the other end of the scale. It's at the uniformed officers that have to go to the emergency calls. It's at those officers who have to investigate a burglary where someone's house has been ransacked. It's at the case where they have to be outside a nightclub on a Friday and Saturday night where everybody's fighting, and they need those numbers. That's where they really struggle. But I have to say, to give them credit, in the vast majority of cases in the UK, the murder teams and the serious crime teams and the organised crime teams are actually staffed very well. To the point where I'm not saying they're not busy, because I've worked in it and they are very, very busy. They're probably too busy at times, if that's possible. But I think undoubtedly the crime rate is very different. Yes, in Manchester, Birmingham, and certainly in London, there are a lot of homicides, there are a lot of murders, unquestionably. But when you compare it to other parts of the world and other countries, it's nothing like that. So I think probably the crime rate definitely plays a part. But I think there is a real emphasis from senior management in the UK to make sure they put the bodies, the officers and the detectives in the places where they're going to be needed, the highest risk places. So you're looking at things like child abuse, domestic abuse, murder, that sort of thing. And I think that shows in the way that they're able to work these cases. But of course, they always get stretched. And sometimes they will always say, if I brought a detective in to talk to you now, they work in a murder case, they'd tell you they haven't got enough staff, and they used to tell me that every day. And I used to agree with them to a certain extent. You've never quite got enough to do what you want, but the danger is you haven't got enough to do the basics and to do the stuff that really needs to be done. And I think in our country, it's that shows on the front line, which is where you'll see people now saying, I'm not going to ring the police anymore because they never turn up, that sort of thing. We're starting to get a little bit of that now, where women and girls, because of some of the horrible things that have happened in the last few years, particularly in London, are now starting to lose confidence and faith in the police, to the point where they're actually not going to pick the phone up, which for me is terrifying. Yes. Because that's what they're there for, and the vast majority of these officers are hardworking, good, genuine, honest people. But it only takes one or two bad apples, as you know, to paint a bad picture. And the worry is, I think we're at a critical point in the UK at the moment where we're just kind of teetering on the edge of a lot of the public not having any confidence or faith in the police, which is a real worry for me.
Is that a worldwide phenomenon, Stuart? Because it's rampant here in the U.S. and I find it disturbing. It's really disturbing for me. As someone who has friends and family that are in law enforcement, I find that trend disheartening. I still believe in good in this country and people fighting on the right side of the law. And I believe in the fact that we need that force for good in this country to help us observe laws and rules and to run as an efficient society. And that they are here to help. I do see our law enforcement officials out there doing things for the community even outside of their jobs, which are incredibly stressful and take up a lot of their times, yet they go out and they do community efforts as well. And to me, it seems like, I hate to say this, Stuart, but it seems like we've glorified evil in our society for way too long. And it seems like it's hard to get people motivated to want to be in law enforcement. Is this what's the reason for us not having enough resources in law enforcement, or people wanting to go into law enforcement?
If you hit the nail on the head. I totally agree with what you said about, the good people wanting to do right for society, because we're all in it together. We're all members of a community somewhere in the world. I mean, detective-wise, I think we're at the lowest point in numbers of detectives in the UK at the moment, especially in London. They're leaving in their droves because they're frustrated. They can see that there's not enough of them. They're getting hammered by the media, by the mainstream media, absolutely hammered, to the point where they're wondering whether it's worth going to work anymore, which is, again, a sad state of affairs, really. So there's a lot of detectives who are either reaching their service level, which is normally about 30 years. If you work for 30 years in the police, there comes a decision. I made the decision to leave and do other things. I could have stayed on for longer. Mm-hmm. Anybody who's getting anywhere near 30, or if they've been in the military, sometimes it's around 25 years in the police, you can retire from the police service. And people are making that decision and they're going now. There's others who are resigning and going before that 30 years as well. And people don't necessarily want to become a detective anymore because I think sometimes they can see how hard it is and how difficult a job it can be. It's difficult across the board, but for the detectives who are dealing with the higher profile crimes, it seems to be particularly difficult. So there is a real shortage of police in general. There aren't so many people joining as there were before. And I just put it this way, Tim, really. I think when I joined, I was a kid. Mm-hmm. I joined the police at 16. And I was in a police cadet, so I was an apprentice. Okay. And for 2 years or thereabouts, I had to learn the trade. I had to do military-style marching. I had to learn the law, discipline, all that sort of thing. It did me no harm. Mm-hmm. But nowadays, and I joined for a career, I knew I was going to be in it for the long haul, hopefully, fingers crossed, and that's the way it turned out.
Yep.
But people nowadays who do join, and I'm not tying them all with the same brush because they're not all like this, but I think they join it almost like as a vocation. Oh, I think I'll go in the police for a couple of years, have a bit of fun and do this, that and the other. And that's being sometimes replicated by some of the awful behaviour that's being transmitted. I mean, there'll be a couple of cases recently, without going into lots of detail, of course, where a murder's happened. There's one in particular. A murder took place. 2 young ladies were badly killed in a park. And a couple of the police officers that were tasked with guarding the scene of that murder decided to take some selfies at the scene and post them to their friends on social media and their colleagues. I mean, this is the disciplined police officers. So when you're dealing with, and this is not happening all the time, but there's a culture in the police. I don't know if you're aware, but there's a woman called Baroness Casey in the UK, and she did a recent investigation into the Metropolitan Police, and she produced a report called the Casey Report. Mm-hmm. And if you can find it online. If you were to read that, it's quite shocking, really, in terms of some of the behaviour that's been identified by some of the officers, not all, of course, but some. And it only takes a small amount to behave like that. And once that's put into the media, people see it. And, you know, it's no surprise that it dents their trust in authority and in the police when they hear and see things like that. So there is a real shortage of detectives and uniformed police officers. People aren't joining in the numbers they were before. And the ones who are joining, some of those people are joining for like a few years, see how they get on, and if they don't like it, they're coming out of it again, rather than people in the past who probably would join it as a career and would stick through it, and become pretty good at their job. Mm-hmm. So there are a few challenges there in terms of recruitment, and I think it's just, I say this transparency is really important, because once you have just one or two cases like that, the media tend to focus on them, understandably in a way, and the public then tend to start thinking that a lot of the officers and staff are like that, when in reality, these people are a minority, but it only takes a small minority, of course, to spoil it for a lot of other good people.
Yeah. You know, I was going to say, and I was going to throw this question out there, but then I started thinking about the actual cases in the book, and that is it that the crimes have gotten more violent or more dangerous? But then you look at some of the cases in the book back to the 1930s or the turn of the 20th century, and you still have violent dismemberings and violent murders, and it doesn't seem that the crimes can get that much more violent. Am I wrong there, Stuart?
No, I think you're right. There is definitely, and you're right to highlight the historical, because there's a lot of stuff in there that you think, wow, and there's things like people getting poisoned and, been shot with guns and things like that, and being dismembered, as you say. And that, of course, unfortunately still happens these days. I guess what I'd say about that is sometimes some of the cases I've dealt with, some of the cases in the book, I think sometimes now it seems to be, particularly in the bigger cities in the UK, that it's kind of the reason or the rationale why somebody kills somebody is kind of become a bit tainted.
Okay.
So it's disrespect is there now. So if you've got a gang of people and somebody posts something on WhatsApp or social media, which is just mentioning something fairly minor in the grand scheme of things, it becomes such a big issue in someone's mind that they're prepared to go and stab somebody and kill them for it, for the fact that they've disrespected them. So I think there's quite a bit of that now as well that's crept in. But there's always been violence there. I think now it's just because people sometimes ask me about, what do you think about the video games that you can buy, the things you can see on social media and on the internet, basically. Youngsters now have all got the phones. Well, when I joined the police, I didn't have a mobile phone. It was a long time before I got one of those things. Yeah. And it was a great big brick that you had to carry around with two hands, like sort of thing. But it's just, I think there's a little bit of a society issue there with some of the younger generation where the violence is kind of top level for what in the grand scheme of things is something very minor, like a word that's been spoken or a rumor that's going round. And I think that's a worry. But you're right. Throughout time, there's always been violence, and an awful lot of violence in terms of what people are capable of doing. I think more with the media as well. The media highlight the cases a lot more now than they've ever done before. And of course, the police are geared up now to investigate it more, whereas back in the day, they didn't have crime scenes and they didn't have really special forensics officers. They just had someone like a doctor that would turn up and say, oh yeah, that person's dead. And the police would come probably from Scotland Yard across the country with a bowl of hats on, and it would all be the old attaché case. And let's see if we can solve it for the country bumpkins, as it were. So yeah, things have certainly changed in that respect. But yeah, it's just what people are capable of doing. Just for when you look through the detail of it and see what starts it. I heard something recently that the emotion that's linked to murder most in the UK is humiliation. Now, I thought it might have been hatred, jealousy, something like that, but it's actually humiliation.
Yeah.
So it's dissing somebody in front of somebody else, posting something. I keep mentioning social media, but it's such a big animal these days.
Right.
Posting something on social media that somebody else doesn't like or misinterprets, and it just kind of snowballs from there. And before you know it, you've got this person turning up at your door or wherever, brandishing a firearm or a knife or some other crazy weapon. Yeah, it's worrying, really,
right,
when that sort of thing happens.
I was going to bring that up somewhere here during our time. You mentioned that in the book. Humiliation was a major factor for murder, and that makes a lot of sense. And I kind of want to tie it back here to the internet and social media, and that I'd had a conversation with a friend over the weekend, and we were talking about how it seems like this friend of mine had said that the internet had become one of the worst things to ever happen to society. And I said, well, why do you say that? This person said, well, because it seems like before the internet, we were blissfully unaware of some of the worst things that could happen to society. And it made the world smaller. And all of a sudden, now we know all the intricacies of humans. We know everything. We know all our warts and all, we know everything.
Yeah.
And now that everything's been exposed, we know our tendencies and we see everything and we want to get angry about it. And one of those things that comes out of anger is, again, humiliation, like you've said, Stuart, brilliantly in the book as well. Sometimes when someone vents their rage at you, you become humiliated. Sometimes when your warts are shown on social media, you become humiliated. When you become bullied, you become humiliated. A lot of people are bullied on social media. Yeah. And when everything is put out there for the world to see, people have forgotten how to fight back. So what do? They take the most extreme measures. If your stuff is presented to the world, they go out there and they murder because, well, I need a punishment big enough to fit your crime. And they think that's the punishment, not just giving it back in equal measure. They go one step above. And to them, one step above is 10 steps above what it really should be.
Yeah. I agree. It's in a way, it's one of the best things that's happened to us, social media, the internet, that sort of thing, because we can reach everywhere now. We can find out anything within seconds generally. But in another way, in terms of what your friend was talking about, absolutely agree. In terms of being a detective, that when I joined the police and was initially a detective, we never had the internet, we never had social media. And as I was working, it crept in, and it was quite frustrating because we'd get a lot of misinformation. So I'm sure you can understand if something happens out there now, the chances are somebody will have a phone, a mobile phone, cell phone. They'll record it, they'll video it, audio, video. It'll go on the internet and it'll be spread far and wide very quickly. Then people will start putting their own comments on it. And that's another challenge for detectives and investigators, to pull the bits out of that and identify the true ones, because you might have a real true witness on there that saw something and is too scared to come forward or has left the scene. And obviously you want to speak to that person. But in amongst that, there are probably hundreds of others who just want to put something hateful on. We've even had a case where we were dealing with a murder case where a man had been stabbed to death and the suspect had gone on the run, and we were trying to chase him, not physically, we couldn't see him, but we were trying to track him on social media, mobile phone, the usual sort of tools that we talk about in the book there that we use to try and catch a killer. And people started posting on social media, and it was all lies and misinformation about alleged sightings. And it transpired that somebody, on behalf of the suspect, had put people up to basically say, can you send the police to this location here? Because I'm actually at the other end of the country or the county, and I want to get as far away from them as I can. Can you tell them you've just seen my vehicle at this location? So send them all there. And then, I'm sure these things go on anyway, but these sort of things make life much more difficult for an investigator. And when you're dealing with a murder or something like that, it's hugely frustrating. And I remember I actually had to do a press conference. I had to actually call in all the TV stations and the radio stations and just say to them, social media is great, the internet is great, but please, we're dealing with a murder case here. We're trying to find a dangerous individual. Please don't put the information on there. We understand you're trying to help. If you've got any information, this is the official route to put it on. Please don't share things on social media. And I think literally there were one or two individuals that were just trying to send us on a complete wild goose chase just to be able to give this character a bit of breathing space, which is just, I know it happens, but that's just an indication of how it can be frustrating for an investigator. And it's an awful lot more work as well. And as you say, you quite rightly say, you've got these people, I call them faceless keyboard warriors, who are somewhere in a room somewhere. Nobody knows who they are. Often when they're exposed, they turn out to be a 14-year-old kid from Wales in the UK or something like that. Anywhere would be a youngster, or it could be an older person. We just don't know. But I've seen it in action, whereby there's a comment on social media and somebody from somewhere puts a really quite hateful thing on there. Then somebody responds to it. And eventually the faceless keyboard warrior just withdraws from the situation and lets all these other people have a go at each other. And it can get really quite tasty and quite violent and nasty. And, and I think, I don't know, there must be some sort of pleasure that these individuals get from this. But on the alternative is what you talked about, where somebody thinks the only alternative is to go out and harm somebody because nobody's listening to me. I'm trying to get help here, or I'm trying to do something, and nobody's listening to what I'm saying. Yeah. I've got to go out and I've got to do something. So it's a real tricky one. And I think it's, for the good that it does, it's great, and it does some good, no question. But on the balance of that, there is also the harm and the negativity surrounding it when it's abused, without question.
Stuart, one other thing I want to ask you about here before we go to break is, in your time in the police force before you went into consultancy, did you see? It was interesting because a few weeks ago, I hate to bring up Law and Order, the show, but you do help consult for different shows. Did you see much murder for hire on the internet? And did you deal with cases of murder for hire on the internet? Because they had an interesting show where they were showing how they were using the dark web to do murder for hire cases. And one of the things that they had shown was, and I know it's fiction, by the way, folks, I know it's not completely based on everything that's true, but one of the things they were showing was assassins could basically go on the dark web. They could pick their case. They would go out, try to assassinate that particular case, and they had to prove it by taking a selfie with the body. And then they would get paid in Bitcoin, which when you watch this, you go, wow, this is absolutely brilliant. Whoever thought of this had to have a brilliant mind. But then you think, wait a minute, if this was based on something true, this was already probably in play at one time. This is probably not a new concept.
No. I think I saw the program you're referring to. If it wasn't that one, it was something very similar.
Yeah.
But it was set. This one was set in America.
Yeah.
And it was, it's probably the same program, Tim, I would think. I've not personally dealt with any, but I know of other colleagues, ex-colleagues of mine who have, not necessarily to the extent of using the dark web, although I'm sure it's there because there is so much on that dark web these days that pretty much you can get what you want, really, within reason, or even without reason. Mm-hmm. But I've known cases before where spouses, partners, wives, husbands have wanted to get rid of their other half, and rather than just divorce them or separate from them, they've made contact. They've sent something literally on a, not quite a public forum, but they put something on social media. Does anybody know of anybody that can bump my other half off? And it has actually developed into a situation. The one I'm referring to in particular, they managed to stop it thankfully, before it happened. And they managed to go in with a conspiracy charge, which was the right charge. And they were convicted of it because all the evidence was on. And I think this goes back to something I mentioned in the book and other books, is the internet and mobile phones. I think people think that you can just search something and then press delete history or delete and it's all gone forever. Well, of course, that's not the case.
Right.
And I think they managed to get this character's phone records, and it was just a hive of activity. And it was literally, internet searches on, is there anybody that we know that can kill somebody, basically? Contract killer. Just Google contract killer. I'll put it in another search engine and see what comes up. So it does happen. It's not regular by any stretch, but it does happen. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's a trend that continues periodically throughout time, because it's just, again, I don't know. I mean, people are prepared to have the most blatant conversations with individuals that they've never met before. And they can't really trust. I mean, there could be sometimes undercover officers get involved in these things as well. I had a case where we were working where the person who was approached didn't want to know about this woman who was asking to kill her husband. But he did the right thing. He went to the police station, he reported it, and then we were able to put an undercover officer in as his mate, because he went back to her and he said, look, I'm not prepared to do this, but I know a guy who is. And it developed from there. Then they had all the conversations, they met up, it was all recorded. And it resulted in no harm done, no murder committed, but a very good, strong case where your main witness is an undercover police officer. So, that sort of thing can happen and sometimes does happen.
Wow. I tell you what, Stuart, let's take our break here. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about some of the things I found interesting as far as positions within your department or within a department there in the UK that I find absolutely fascinating. I know we probably have them here in the States, but just some eye-opening positions within the department there that absolutely astounded me. I didn't know that, not that I didn't know they would exist, but when you read about them, it kind of opens your eyes and you go, really? That's a position? We'll talk about that when we come back. I also want to talk about a couple of the cases in the book, which are amazing. I don't want to spoil anything in the book by any means, but there's a couple of cases I want to go over because, folks, if you think serial killing and brutal killings are just reserved for this day and age, that's not the truth at all. Brutal killings have been going on as long as we've been around. But there's some astounding ones in here that are pretty interesting. And there's one in particular I want to go over with Stuart, which is just too good to be true. I read this case last night and I shiver when I think about it. I'll tell you which one that is when we come back. Our guest is Stuart Gibbon. He co-authored a book here called A Straightforward Guide to Catching a Killer, a reference guide to murder investigation past and present. The author's Stephen Wade and our guest Stuart Gibbon. We have a link in the description of this program for this book. I want you to go out and get it during the break. And when we come back, we'll talk to Stuart about some of these cases, and we'll talk about some of the positions in the police department in the UK that are absolutely fascinating. When we come back, more with Stuart Gibbon here on the Best in True Crime Podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. Welcome back to the Best in True Crime Podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. Our guest is Stuart Gibbon. He's the co-author of A Straightforward Guide to Catching a Killer, a reference guide to murder investigation, past and present. He is a co-author on that book along with Stephen Wade. Before the break, Stuart, I had teased that there's some interesting positions there in the UK that, let's say you don't want to necessarily Well, you want to beat the pavement. You want to help in investigating a murder, but let's just say you don't want to go head to head with a killer, but you want to still help. There's some positions here, and I want to point these out, which, let's just say, Stuart, they're very interesting positions. And there's one in here, and I want to make sure I get this right. I'm thumbing through the book as we're talking here. Is it a forensic entomologist? I think I'm getting that one right. Is that the one that deals with insects?
Yes.
Okay,
that's right. Yeah,
let's jump right to the chase here, Stuart.
Can I just, before I answer that, Tim? Sorry, can I just point out that all of our books, and we've written 6 books now, but all of our books are called straightforward guides. It's not because catching a killer is a straightforward thing to do. It's far from it, as you can imagine. But
sure.
Our publisher is Straightforward Publishing. So that's where the link comes into the straightforward. Straightforward, hopefully they are straightforward to read and everybody can understand what's in them. Mm-hmm. But Straightforward Publishing is our publisher.
Okay.
Yeah, I just because when you read the title out to me, I thought the straightforward guide to catching a killer, and nothing could be further from the truth. It's really quite a complex job, and one that's got lots of arms to it. But I suppose the book is straightforward in as much as the way it's written. Hopefully, anyway.
It very much is, and I tip my cap to you that it's very much straightforward, and it lives up to its name, in the fact that you get everything.
The idea was to make it as interesting as possible, hence a lot of the case studies and the bullet points and things like that, because we didn't want it to be just a reference book. We wanted it to be a book that's going to fascinate true crime fans, as we touched on. And, that people would pick up time and again and just, what was that case about? Let me go back and read that again. So, yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Forensic entomologist. Okay.
Let me add to that real quick, Stuart, just before we jump into forensic entomology. To give the listeners an idea, when you pick up this book, not only do you get to learn about the police departments in the UK, but you also get examples of crimes having to do with that specialty. So when we talk about forensic entomology, you also get a case along with it that tells you a little bit about what that specialty does, which I'm not going to tell you about the case in this case, but it kind of creeps you out a little bit. So, I mean, you get a nice slice of what that specialty does. So what's really cool is you're getting an idea of what that specialty does within the police department, which is really cool. So it's you're learning along with not only just what the position does, but you're getting a taste of how it fits in with the department with a real life case. So that's why I'm saying this book is great for our listeners, because you're getting the example along with the actual learning about the actual department. So I'm sorry, Stuart, I interrupted you. Forensic entomology. Now, I'll tell you, my friend, I'm not freaked out by insects, but when we got into the actual insects in entomology, go ahead. I'll let you take over from here.
The forensic entomology. Well, entomology as a discipline, as a science, is the study of it. It's the study of insects, many different types of insects, mainly kind of flies and butterflies, things like that, but just insects in general. And when we die, and we're all going to get this eventually, our body we're no longer there, of course, in spirit, but our body will decompose. It's a natural state of affairs that happens because your blood's no longer running through your body and everything kind of shuts down. So inevitably, your body will decompose. Now, depending on where your body is at the time, so if you're locked in your flat and it's 30 degrees outside and you've got the central heating on full blast, you're going to decompose an awful lot quicker than if you're out in the middle of a field and it's -3 Celsius kind of thing.
Right.
So there are factors that affect the rate of decomposition of a body, but it will decompose. If you freeze a body, which sometimes happens when a post-mortem, we call it autopsy, I think, in America, post-mortem in the UK, sometimes you can't, normally you hold a post-mortem within 24 to 48 hours after a murder has happened, if you like.
Okay.
But you can't always do that. Depends on circumstances, various things. Sometimes the body is kept chilled and sometimes it's kept in a freezer because there may be a need for a second autopsy if some suspect is arrested with a case. Obviously, the defence then have an entitlement to have a second autopsy to check on the results from the first one. In the meantime, between the first and second, I'm going off grid here, but bear with me.
No, go ahead.
In between the first and the second, the body will be kept in a freezer because very cold temperatures slows the rate of decomposition. Mm-hmm. And you may well have heard of other people who've been wrapped very tightly, like mummified almost. Sometimes people can be found after many, many years, and the condition of their body is actually quite good. It's not just bones and teeth and that sort of thing. There's actually a lot more left. So the circumstances, the weather, the individual case depends on how quickly the body will decompose. But inevitably, what will happen is that insects will be attracted to the body, and often it's flies, blowflies, your common house fly, those sort of many different types of flies. They're attracted to the body and what's left of the body. They feed on the body and they lay eggs within the body in various different places. Sorry if you're squeamish and you're listening to this. Yeah. I had my egg and tomato sandwich quite some time ago, so hopefully I'm safe.
Oh, good. I haven't had breakfast, so there you go.
So they lay eggs. The eggs hatch. There's obviously different stages that it goes through. They're called pupae, which are little cases. Then they hatch and they become, they start off with being maggots. Then they become flies. But basically, a forensic entomologist can be given a situation. They're called forensics because they work in such detail and they're specialists and they work with the police. So, for example, if a body has been found in a field outdoors, a forensic entomologist could well help the investigation team by looking at the body and saying, well, actually, yes, you have got some presence of insects here. And they take some of those insects away. They examine them. They see how old they are. They see the condition they're in. They obviously look at the body as well. And they're able to say, within fairly tight timescales, how long that body has been there because of the decomposition, which has led to the activity of the insects. Does that make sense? So you can actually come up with almost like a timeline. And I think certainly the case study in cases I've been involved in previously, you can narrow it down quite well to say, that body's been there for a certain length of time because these insects, in order to get where they are now in the state that they're in now, they have to go through stages A, B, and C. And each of those stages would usually take this length of time. So it's a science. There is a little bit of leeway in terms of the timescales, but it's very useful for investigators to be able to rely on people like that as part of a team of experts that you can call out if you have a decomposed body. It only really applies where the insects are present. So if you've gone past that stage, the insects have fed, they've hatched, they've gone, and eventually, the body has decomposed to the point where literally you have just got, some teeth and some bones. Then your forensic entomologist, you're looking at something called a forensic anthropologist then, who is a bone expert, who can tell you, well, I can tell you that this individual was male. They were aged between 20 and 30, probably Caucasian, white skin color, and they've had a hip replacement in the last however many years. So that's where you look towards your bones. But yeah, entomology, study of insects, fascinating, but a little bit gory, but absolute gold dust to a senior crime investigator investigating a murder where they have a body that's been left for some time, and they want to try and narrow down the timescales as to how long that body may have been at that location.
There's a case in the book where this entomology comes in, and it's very fascinating, but it's almost a little stomach turning. You tell me if you want to get into it with this or if we should leave it lie. And that is Dr. Buck Ruxton. Do you want to talk about him, or are you familiar, or should I give you or should I tell people about him a little bit?
Yeah, go for it. Okay. Just a little bit, I think, Tim. Yeah, that's all right. Okay.
So Buck Ruxton, he was from a Parsi family. He was in India, came over to the States, and initially he was married to a Parsi woman, but it didn't work out. Then he went to Britain. And when he went over to Britain, he married a woman there. And I think they had 3 children. And he also, they had a housekeeper or a nanny by the name of, I think was it Mary? I think was her. Yeah, they employed Mary.
Yeah.
He believed that his wife had been sleeping around with a guy in Blackpool, but she wasn't up to anything. At one point, his jealousy became so enraged that he killed her and Mary because Mary just happened to be there. So he killed both of them. In his rage, as a doctor, decided he was going to take both of them to the bathroom, and he cut their body parts up into pieces. Now, at this point, by the way, folks, your doctor is not as thorough as you think he is. Instead of being thorough about the job, he was thorough about what he did with the body parts. He put them in the tub and he drained them of blood. Okay? So there was no blood left in the actual body parts. Where he slipped up is he wrapped the different body parts in different things. Here's where he slipped up. He took one of the body parts and he would wrap it in newspaper, which was a special edition that was central to the area in which he was living in. So it was a special edition of the paper that was date specific. So it led cops right to him. That region where he lived in a specific date when he cut up the bodies. Unbelievable. So the body parts, and I'm talking he'd cut off a foot, he'd cut off a limb, he'd cut off, the pelvis, he'd wrap it up, and he basically drove around his area or drove around this certain area and would throw them out the window in different areas, and he'd spread out the body parts. Well, these body parts start coming up and start being found, and the police, and again, I encourage you to pick up the book to read the entire story as I'm not getting specific about it, but he dragged the bodies to the bathroom, laid them on a long seat approximately 15 feet long and 18 inches wide. He cut them up after filling the bath with cold water as each limb was dismembered. He cut the arteries and placed it in the bath, thereby allowing the blood to dissolve. Having drained the portions of the body complete of blood, he dried them with cotton wool, wrapped them in sheets of newspaper, and packed them into suitable parcels. Again, those parcels could be cloth, it could be newspaper with the date on it. He really messed up. He left a lot of forensic holes for the police to find. Now, here's where entomology comes in. When they find these body parts, the parts were assigned to the labels of body number 1 and body number 2. They separate the body parts so they kind of are putting together a puzzle for the two bodies. The softer parts of the remains were covered by maggots. So Dr. A.G. Mearns was able to gauge the time that the murders took place from the state of the maggots, much like Stuart was pointing out. Okay. The source of the maggots is that they are the pupae of blowflies, insects that are attracted to rotting flesh. Specimens are studied to ascertain how long the female flies settled on the body and laid eggs, usually done at the orifices of the body. Again, if you haven't had your breakfast or your lunch, you probably shouldn't be listening right now. The flies have 4 life stages, much like Stuart was pointing out, and so that helps timing to take place as each stage exits for an average period of time, as long as the temperatures have been right. The cause of death in both cases was strangulation, as that's the way he killed them before he cut them up in the bath. And it was also found that after study at the top of the stair, the killings had taken place there. After the main part of the forensic work, the time and place of death was known. The main task was to reconstruct the bodies as far as possible. Now, I'm going to leave the rest of the story for the book, but let's just say when they got to court, Dr. Buck Ruxton fell apart like soggy cake. And the prosecution did an amazing job and basically reconstructed, not literally with the body parts, but reconstructed the entire crime scene through forensics. And folks, you have to read this book and see just exactly what they did, because it's brilliant. I don't think I've ever read anything here in the States like that, Stuart.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's an amazing case because, as I say, it was so thorough in certain aspects where you think everything is bang on and I'm not going to get caught, and then decides to use a special edition newspaper to wrap some of the body parts in, which of course ties him not only to a potential date or date range, but also a potential location as well. So all that groundwork and all that hard work. But like you say, it's a fascinating case, and one that just shows the power. And you're going back quite a long time with that one as well. And I've got a more recent one in the book as well, talking about how entomologists and other forensic experts work with the police to help to solve cases. But absolutely fascinating, really interesting.
And keep in mind, this case takes place in the 1930s, early to mid 1930s. This isn't a case from now. This happened almost 100 years ago. So, I mean, this is a gruesome murder of two women. And it turns out that Mary's parents were the ones who were concerned that she didn't come home. And it was Mary's mother that started to identify on the body parts certain pieces of clothing that she knew were Mary's. So that helped police in the beginning to start identifying the fact that, well, okay, this is Mary, so obviously we have to take a look at the doctor. He becomes the suspect. But then it's the special edition newspaper and the exact time, and then we get into the entomology, and then you bring in the different forensic specialists, and man, it's fascinating how this case was built. This is before DNA. That how everything was put together, Stuart, and it was put together so brilliantly. And
over 50 years before DNA, well over 50 years, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's
incredible. Amazing.
It's odd, you put in the book brilliantly, you put in the book about DNA, and you mentioned the birth of DNA a few times. 1987, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's it's mid to late. In fact, it wasn't really fully up and running until the early 90s in the UK. Properly, and from an investigative point of view, it was being worked on and worked through mid to late 80s. But there was a lot to learn. Whereas now, of course, you can have something on a piece of clothing that you can't see with a naked eye. You can only see under a 4x microscope, but you'd be able to get DNA from it potentially, which is just brilliant from an investigative point of view.
The other specialist that absolutely blew my mind, and I'm searching for the name here, but here it is, I believe. It is the, yes, here it is. I believe I have it. Correct me if I'm wrong on this. The forensic, is it the paleontologist?
Yes, paleontologist, paleontologist. There's different ways of pronouncing it. But yeah, and again, another brilliant one. We used to have a lady that we worked with. I think I'll probably mention her in the book. She was called Pat Wilshire.
Yes.
Brilliant woman. And her nickname was Pollen Pat because she was a specialist in pollen and spores. So again, moving away from the gruesome side of the body and the insects, think about, somebody's killed a person in a house and they put him in the car. They've took him and dumped him in a park somewhere. You've got all those grasses and trees and things blowing around. I mean, especially at the minute, pollen in the UK is really high. Mm-hmm. So it's flying around all over the place. What palynologists can do is identify different types of pollen and spores and tell you what they are, but also tell you where they've come from. So, for example, if a body's been moved from A to B, there's lots of pollen activity in A, not so much in B, that palynologist would be able to tell you on examination of the body and the area around the body that actually this is unusual because I've found some pollen on the body that doesn't belong around here. It only grows in a certain forest. Literally, they could be that good. A certain 3 or 4 forests in the country, and that's where this murder was take place, or that's where this body has been before it's been moved to where it is now. And Pat Wilshire's been involved in many, many cases, but one in particular that you may be aware of, and I think I touch on it in the book, were the Soham murders.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with the Soham murders. Soham's a village in Cambridgeshire. There were 2 young girls that were murdered by a man called Ian Huntley, who is a horrible man. He killed those 2 young girls and then he pretended to help by searching for their bodies, things like that. Mm-hmm. But to cut a long story short, the girls' bodies were found about 25 miles away from where they lived, and they had been deposited in a wooded area. And Pat Wilshire, the forensic palynologist, went to that scene and was able to identify through the clothing of the girls still had and the area itself that they'd been moved from one position to another. And she was able to provide evidence to show. And what they did was, when they eventually realized it was Huntley, they seized his car. Now, he had already changed the tires on the car because he was thinking investigatively, I've been driving up this road, so I might have left tire marks and things. So he had the tires changed, even though they didn't need changing. But what he didn't do, and he cleaned the car, he washed it inside and out really thoroughly, but not thoroughly enough. Under the wheel arches of the vehicle and the bodywork itself, there was some pollen and spores and other material that the palynologist was able to say came from the scene where the bodies were found. And there was other evidence that was able to link him. So there was a mix of chalk and clay dust on it. It was a farmer's track, and it was very unusual material that the farmer had put down because it was getting a bit muddy. It had been raining at the time, and they found some of that in the vehicle as well. They found some on his clothing as well. So it's just putting little pieces of the jigsaw together. This was such unusual material that it could only have come from certain places. And when you find it on someone's clothing or in their vehicle or in or on their vehicle, it's quite compelling evidence when you then find other evidence as well. So again, a forensic palynologist, absolutely critical if you've got particularly an outdoor area or a suspect that's been arrested, that may have been outdoors at some point. Because as we move and as we walk, we pick up fibers, we pick up things on the bottom of our shoes that we don't even realize. You can't see them, but under a microscope you can, and then you can compare them to the area where they came from. And more often than not, you can say, I can link this item to that scene, which is really quite compelling evidence. I can say that person was there because on the bottom of their shoes that they were wearing when they're arrested, there is this material which is only available at this location. Doesn't always work as perfectly as that, but it's very, very important evidence in cases.
Right. I mean, you have, if anyone's watched a crime show, even a criminal has watched a crime show and goes, well, I got to be careful I don't get any hairs anywhere. I got to be careful that, maybe a fiber or something. And they try to be as careful as they can. No one would think pollen, Stuart. Pollen. No.
Yeah, you can't even see. You can see some of them, but they're just minute traces. As I say, you get a palynologist, take them to a lab, put them under a microscope, and there they are. And not only that, but they can tell you which tree they've come from, which branch, which root, which plant, which bush, which type of grass, and then go on to say, well, actually, this grows in these sort of areas. It certainly doesn't grow there. So they can not only tell you that your body's been moved from one location to another. If you've got a suspect, then you get their clothing, and their clothing will harvest, like you say, not just the fibers and the hairs maybe, but if they've taken the time not to leave the DNA, hopefully, or anything else from their point of view, pollen and spores and little or microorganisms, whatever they are, they're picking things up all the time. And you know what it's like. I've got a couple of grasses growing in my garden, and when I go over that way, if I've got some sort of clothing on, it leaves bits on it anyway, and sometimes you can see them. But if you times that by about 100, that's what your clothing and your footwear is picking up when you go into these areas. You just can't see it, and you're trampling with your foot. As your foot goes down, it embeds itself into the sole of your footwear, it gets into the grooves on the side. It just goes everywhere. You can't see it, but it's such valuable evidence.
And then one other one, but before we leave today, that I gotta ask you about, because I always assumed this would be worked in with a detective position as a forensic podiatrist. Now, I see a podiatrist every week because I've got Charcot foot, so I'm in good with my podiatrist. But simply knowing how a walk or a gait would go, or knowing how footfalls land, or knowing a print, or knowing certain things about feet and how different prints would come up. That's interesting that's a specialized position. I would think wouldn't that be worked? I mean, I think here in America, that might be worked into the position of a detective, but why the specialization of a forensic podiatrist?
There's like all the other forensic experts, there are scientists, so there will be a podiatrist, like the sort of person you see as well, but the forensic ones are another grade where they're used to dealing with it for evidence rather than just problems that we have with our feet. Mm-hmm. But everybody walks everywhere, and I won't go into too much detail to spoil it if anybody's going to buy and look at the book, but there's a case in the book, a murder case that I ran, where we had to use a forensic podiatrist, and he gave us exactly what we were looking for. Mm-hmm. And it was basically from some very grainy black and white camera footage of three figures that were moving in it, and I would watch it hundreds of times and see nothing. And the forensic podiatrist looked at it and came out with a fact, which was just like blew our mind. How on earth do you know that? Well, I can tell you because I'm a forensic podiatrist and I look for these sort of things. But you're right, it's about the way we walk, the way we hold ourselves, the pressure we put on our feet. If you look at your shoes, you'll often find it's worn much more on the inside or the outside, depending on how you walk, and just anything like that. If you get footwear recovered or you want a suspect's feet examining, there was another case again, which I think is touched on in the book, where a suspect committed a murder on two people, and he took his socks and shoes off when he committed the murder, and he walked through the scene without realizing that he'd left obviously his bare footprints rather than his shoe prints on there. And again, a podiatrist looking at the feet, get the suspect, compare the footmarks to the feet. You can't see it in night, but when you use specialist techniques, you can lift these sort of things up.
Yep.
So again, very, very interesting. And it's certainly not a detective. It's basically you do the investigation and you have these experts to call on from I say simple, that's not disrespectful, but from a forensic scientist that deals with blood, things like that, all the way through your entomologist, palynologist, podiatrist, people who kind of specialize in certain aspects of science that can tell you things that are just so valuable when you're dealing with a serious case. They're not always available for every kind of case. It's only really for your serious crime and your murder cases, but worth their weight in gold and able to tell you things about the way someone moves, their posture, their gait, that sort of thing. That's going to be so very important. I would love to have been trained to do that sort of thing as a detective, but it was something I never got anywhere near, unfortunately.
I hear you. No, trained in a specialty is kind of, it's really cool. It's really cool to be able to be that trained and that specialized that you can pick up on things like that. Just briefly here, Stuart, before we leave people today, I think there's some confusion with us over here as to how your court system works. So if you can briefly walk me through when you arrest somebody, and typically here in America, you're arrested, you're put in some sort of jail. There's a hearing. You're determined whether you get bail. You're held over for trial if it's a serious murder offense, and then, depending on how much time passes, you're set for a date. You have that date, and then things proceed. Is it similar to the American system, or are things a little different? And then I've heard of Crown Court before, but explain a little bit as to what we're getting into here with the UK system.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, dealing with the police themselves, before we move on to court, if you're arrested for murder, you'll be held in the police station. In the UK, Scotland is different. Scotland has a different kind of law and procedures, so I won't go there. But suffice to say, they have more stricter rules than England and Wales and parts of Ireland. You can only detain someone in Scotland for less time. But in England and Wales and parts of Ireland, there's something called the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, which is known for short as PACE, P-A-C-E. Massively important legislation, covers lots of different things. Came in the 80s. 1984 was the legislation. By 85, 86, it was embedded into the legal system. And what it says basically is that the police have a certain amount of time in order to deal with someone in custody, which means they're in the police station. So they're arrested for murder, taken in, they're given their rights, there's various things happen, they were interviewed, but the police have initially 24 hours in which to deal with them, the initial 24 hours. When it gets towards 24 hours, which often isn't very long because the police are doing lots of things in a murder case, it's not always long enough, the police can apply to one of their senior managers within the police of a superintendent rank, which is the next one up from chief inspector. It's a high rank. Mm-hmm. And if that person is satisfied the investigation is being correctly handled, they can add some extra time onto that 24 hours, anything up to an extra 12 hours. So potentially with a superintendent's authority, you can detain someone at a police station for a serious crime for up to 36 hours. And then you're interviewing them, you're doing searches, you're gathering evidence. If you need longer than that, you can get it, but it's a bit more complicated. What you have to do then, if you want more than 36 hours, up to a maximum of 96, which is the longest the UK police, England, Wales certainly, can hold someone in police detention. You have to go to court. You have to go to a magistrate's court, which is the lower court, where one magistrate or two or maybe even three sit on a bench, and you have to go and argue the case, basically, and the lawyer goes on behalf of the defendant and you argue it and you say, we need another 12 hours because we've got this and this to do. The defence will probably say, well, actually, the police have been doing nothing, so you need to release my client. The usual sort of thing you get in a courtroom.
Okay.
The magistrates can give it up to 96 hours in total. So that's the most you can have. While all this is going on, if you think, as an SIO, senior detective, that you have sufficient evidence that you can lay a charge or charge this particular individual with murder or any other crime related to the murder, you have to speak to a body of people called the CPS, which are the Crown Prosecution Service. Now, they prosecute people on behalf of the police. They're not police officers, they're lawyers. And you have to speak to them as the person is in custody and say to them, look, and on a murder, sometimes you get a lawyer in very early before you've even arrested somebody because you want to tell them about the case. So when you have to make that phone call or have that video call, you haven't got to go through it all again. You've already told them what's going on. It's only nowadays in a murder case and serious crime, it's only the CPS that can authorize a charge against someone. The police can't do it. They used to be able to, but they can't anymore. So the CPS lawyer has to look at the circumstances and say, okay, in my opinion, there is a realistic prospect that this guy could be convicted if they go to court. So they pass what's known as a threshold test. So I'm authorizing you to charge that person with murder, for example. So then the police physically do the charging. And what happens then is the defendant is almost out of the police system then. They have to appear at the first available court. And it's always the magistrate's court first, which again is the lower court. They go there. If it's a murder, the chances are the police are not going to release them. They're going to keep them in the cells because it's so serious. And they're going to physically take him in a van to the court. They appear before the magistrate's court. There may be an application for bail, possibly by the defence, who knows. And then the magistrates what they do, they then send them to the higher court, which is the Crown Court. And that's where any case would be heard in the future. Two scenarios with that particular individual. Either at some point during the criminal process, they will plead guilty because they think the evidence is strong or for whatever reason. If they plead guilty, there won't be a trial. Witnesses won't be called. They'll merely stand up in front of a judge. The case will be discussed and the judge will sentence them. It's a judge who sits in a Crown Court, normally on their own, just one. If they plead not guilty, there has to be what's known as a criminal trial, which means that the date has to be set in the future. I mean, it could be a year later. It does take a long time for everything to be put. The police have got to get all their evidence together, give it to the defence to have a look at. Then they come back with questions. All sorts of things go on. Could take months and months. Then there's a criminal trial. What happens with a criminal trial is the defendant appears at the Crown Court. There's a barrister, or what they call, there used to be a QC, Queen's Counsel. Because of the death of the Queen, it's now a KC, King's Counsel. Okay. Senior barrister, really high, very important. They will have a junior, like a runner that works with them. If there's one defendant, there'll probably be two barristers representing the defendant. But there'll also be a barrister appointed by the CPS, the lawyers, to prosecute the case on behalf of the police. And simply what will happen then, all the witnesses will be called in order, beginning with members of the family, key witnesses, that sort of thing. And at the very end of it, the two barristers will sum up the case, and the jury, you've got 12 members of jury, mixture of men and women, they will be sent out to consider their verdict. What they will be asked is, can you come to a verdict that you're all agreed on? If you can, it's called a unanimous verdict. If you come back to me and tell me whenever that is, that you can all agree on a verdict, whether it's guilty or not guilty, that's what will happen. After a certain period of time, if it's difficult for them all to agree on one verdict or another, the judge will call them back in and will say to them, I'm willing to accept what's known as a majority verdict. If 10 of you can agree a verdict, even if the other two can't, I'm willing to accept that one as a majority. So obviously if 11 can, that's fine. If 10 can, that's fine. But if it's any less than that, it will get to a point at some stage where the judge will have to, and I'm talking days now, you're talking several days. Okay. The judge will call them back in and say, is there any chance that you're going to reach a verdict, as long as you're sitting considering this? And the foreman, who's the person that's been identified as the person to talk on behalf of the jury, can probably say, no, I'm sorry, we can't. And he'll say, in that case, I'm going to discharge you. And what could happen then is there might have to be another trial in the future. And it will be down to the CPS, Crown Prosecution Service, to look at the evidence, see if it's in the public interest to have another trial in the future, or whether something's happened in that case that means the jury just cannot decide on the case. If they're found guilty, then obviously they're sentenced, and if it's a murder, they're going to be probably looking at between 20 and 30 years possibly in custody. And then at the end of that term, that will be their minimum term. At the end of that term, they will be eligible to apply for parole. So even though the judge says to them at the end of the trial, if the foreman of the jury says guilty, the judge will say you've been found guilty of murder. There is no more serious crime. A murder is statutory, fixed in law, life imprisonment. So I sentence you to life imprisonment. However, there is a minimum term that you must serve before you're eligible to release. And that could be anything. It could be anything, but it's normally between 20 and 30 years on average for a murder case.
So there's no chance that a murder suspect could get off on a mistrial due to jury indifference, is what you're saying, in your system?
Yeah, if the jury can't reach a decision, then the chances are it would be put forward for a possible retrial. If something happens in amongst a case and a jury member does something wrong, there was a case recently where a jury member was sent to prison because they'd gone out off their own back, having been told by the judge in no uncertain terms, all of the jury, you must not look on social media and do internet searches on these people because it will taint your views on the case. And it transpired that this individual went onto the internet and searched the history of this person. And then not only that, but they went in the jury room the next day and told everybody that they'd done it. And of course, one of the members of the jury reported them to the judge, and they were sent to prison. I think they got 3 or 6 months, something like that.
Wow.
But it's a legislation. You must, you're told what you hear in the courtroom stays in the courtroom.
Right.
You mustn't discuss it with anybody else other than other members of the jury. And what you must really not do is start doing internet searches on any of the members of the, whether it be witnesses, the victim, the suspect, or anybody. It's just totally against the rules of being a jury member.
Yeah.
So in answer to your question, Tim, the jury could be. If something goes wrong with a jury, then the case could be thrown out. If the evidence is a bit dodgy, then the defence can apply for it to be thrown out. And if the judge agrees, halfway through the trial, they might just stop the case and say, you're free to go. I'm going to say it's not guilty because there's something wrong. But generally, if the case goes to plan, all the evidence is given by the prosecution and then the defence. The other thing about a case like that is in the UK, the defendant doesn't have to give evidence. It's their own decision.
Okay.
They can, if they want to, they can get up in the box and talk as long as they want. They will, of course, be examined by the prosecution as well,
right.
Cross-examined,
right.
But they don't have to give evidence in a case if they don't want to. So it can take up to a year, sometimes more. A plea of guilty to murder could be completed within probably about 3 or 4 months if everything goes according to plan.
Now, in that 20 to 30 years of the sentence of a murderer, there's no early parole in that 20 to 30 years. That's a strict 20 to 30 years.
That's the first time that you will be eligible to be considered for parole is when that term expires, whether it be 20, 25, 30 years. So there's nothing going to happen between, the date you're sentenced and until you reach that minimum term. And even then, you might not be released. If the parole board think that you're too dangerous or there's other aggravating features to the case, then you won't be released at that point, and you might apply in the future. But there's no guarantee that you'll be released on the day that you finish your sentence.
And if you're a multiple offender, let's say a multiple felonious offender, not necessarily a multiple murderer, are you guaranteed life?
Not guaranteed. No, it really depends. I mean, what the judge can do, if your history is so bad and you've now committed a murder or another serious crime, what the judge can do is he can say, I'm sentencing you to life imprisonment. On this occasion, due to your background and your previous offending history, it's going to be a whole life order, which means, in effect, you'll never be released. They can do that with certain, and Ian Huntley was one of those people. He'd murdered 2 young girls. He was given 40 years for each young girl's life, but he was also then told at the same time, you're not coming out. You will never come out of prison. So that can happen in certain cases.
See, and we were talking off air. I tend to think you were saying you thought that maybe your country was, or your country was a bit soft on crime. I tend to think that your country might be a little more stricter on crime than our country.
Yeah, that surprised me, Tim, as well. I must admit. I think it's probably in certain cases, I think some of the crimes that people commit, and you see the sentence they get, you think, wow, that's really heavy. And then somebody does something that I would consider is more serious and gets something that's a lot less of a sentence. So I think there's a little bit of inconsistency there. And I'm a bit old fashioned sometimes. And I think that if somebody is convicted of a murder and the circumstances are so horrific, they should be looking at an awful long time in prison.
Yeah.
And it isn't always 20 or 30 years. It can be less than that. It can be 10 years, 15 years. And sometimes I just think it doesn't always fit with the gravity of the offence. There's a little bit of inconsistency, I think, in some of the sentencing. But of course, we don't go down the route of, having any kind of other sentences other than a prison sentence. Capital punishment's been debated once or twice, but we've never gone back to that in the many, many years. And again, there's two camps on that one. Those who will say, well, you just need to get one person that's wrongly convicted, which has happened quite a few times in the past. So yeah, I'm not going to go there. But I do. I just think there is a general thought process amongst some in our country that we're a little bit soft sometimes on some offenders when you compare it to other cases. For example, fraud and things like that, they're really quite strong, quite rightly, because it's a breach of trust. It's a horrible crime, but it's not. It can affect people in all sorts of ways. But then you might get a really serious assault or a sexual offence where the sentence is less, and it's just kind of trying to equate and get in your head how this works. And I know it's based on lots of different criteria that the judges have to take into account, from the age of the offender to the circumstances of the case, many, many different things, whether they've shown remorse, all those sort of things. So I get that. I just think sometimes there's a little bit of inconsistency. And I did think actually that before we chatted off air, that your system was an awful lot more stricter than it sounds like it might be, actually. And I don't know why I thought that. Maybe it's just based on what I've seen and read.
It might be. I think there might be a give and take there. Maybe there's some things that we're stricter on that you're not, and there's some things that you're stricter on that we're not. I think that might be the give and take there, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
The book is a straightforward guide to catching a killer, a reference guide to murder investigation, past and present. We have a link in the description of this program. Stuart Gibbon is our guest. He is the co-author along with Stephen Wade. I'll tell you, folks, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I loved reading this book. I got a thorough education in how things are done across the pond. And I just tell you, Stuart, I was just, my eyes were opened. I thoroughly enjoyed it, my friend. I want to thank you.
Yeah, very welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. That's good news.
Very good news indeed. Folks, it's time now for us to lighten things up a bit. Let's bring in Beer City Bruiser. And it's time now for Dumb Crimes and Stupid Criminals.
It's Crayon News story time.
What happened with this dude, Christ Bearer? I heard he cut his penis off and then jumped off a balcony.
Suspect pulls gun from butt, shoots twice at Denver police.
What is your emergency?
I need help.
And what's the problem?
I'm too high.
You're too high?
Yeah.
It's that time once again, the time you've all been looking forward to. It's time for Dumb Crimes, Stupid Criminals. And with Dumb Crimes, Stupid Criminals, we need to bring in a co-host. We bring in the co-host with the most, the big cuddly bear, the BCB himself, Beer City Bruiser. Bruiser, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. It's just another wonderful day.
That's kind of facetious. Just another wonderful
I've been
day.
feeling my age in my wrestling career these last 2 days. So
I saw that online. I didn't want to. Actually, somebody weighed in brilliantly for me, so I didn't have to do it. It was one commenter said, "Oh, you just wait until you hit your early 50s. You're really going to fall apart then." And I said, "Bravo," because I can tell you.
Well, that gentleman's a former pro wrestler too, so
yeah, but he nailed.
He said he lasted till 50. I said I can't last till 50. I got to get this surgery done now.
Oh no, yeah, by all means, no, you do need that surgery more than anything. But yeah, it's Yeah, when you hit 50, you fall apart, my friend.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And as you can hear, the puppies, they're
going
in
at it.
my corner too, because I can't take them out as much. Play.
Yeah. No, it happens. It happens.
It does.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where, it all catches up to us at one time or another. We're young and we think we're indestructible, and we ride around in these meat suits like we are, and we put ourselves through our paces and our punishments, and then we hit that age and go, what the F was I thinking?
That's true.
Yeah.
But you know what? I wouldn't change a thing. I lived a great life. My body's paying for some stupid stuff I did, but you know what? Overall, it's a fantastic life, and I'm ready for the next chapter, I guess you could say. It's just last 2 days I've been feeling it there, Cruiser.
Oh, yeah. I bet you are, buddy. I bet you are. Although, I'm willing to bet as you're laying there in that hospital bed and you go, wait a minute. Okay, I'm ready to get back out there. I feel great. And you go, oh, no, but there's rehab, and then there's this, and and the minute you start feeling good, you're going to go, God damn it.
Yeah. And this time around, I promised Mrs. Bruiser I'd listen to the doctor, because the last couple surgeries, I was so quick to get back in the ring because I just wanted to work. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of fudged the numbers with the doctors and got back in there as fast as I could. And this time she said, no, I want you 100%, so you have to listen to the doctor. So now every time I'm at that doctor appointment, you know how it is. They say, oh, this is the time frame for this. This is a time frame. In my head, I'm like, I can beat that by a month. But my soul is telling me, nope, you got to make mama happy.
That's true. Well, not only that, but you have to, as you get older, you really have to listen to your body too. True.
This is true.
Yeah. And quality of life is a thing too. It really is. Quality of life is a thing. And
there's exciting things coming up where I'm going to be happy. I won't be in pain for. Like, my youngest daughter turns 21, so we're going to New Orleans, and she wants to do, not everyone's thinking, oh, New Orleans, Bourbon Street, drinking and all that. 21. Nope. Ladies and gentlemen, she's definitely my daughter. We're going to New Orleans to do all the paranormal investigating that we can.
Yeah, and you need to be mobile and on your feet for things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
and then Mandy Leone, who we've had on the show, she's getting married in November.
Oh,
so
wow.
it'll be good to see all of them.
Yeah.
And the Ring of Honor crew again. And then we got the Halloween Horror Nights, which we're going to go to. So I got a lot.
Yep.
Ready to go, and I got to be moving around for it. And then hopefully we get on some cons together and bring the Bruiser and Cruiser to the people.
There you go. See? So that's the thing, you got to be up and mobile, and you got to be ready to go, and that's hard to do if you're scrimping on time frames. So yeah. Exactly. We got a big dumb crime, stupid criminals today, Bruiser. I'll tell you, it was a weird week. Yeah, it was. And I'm going to start off with the weirdest thing of all that I could think of. And by the way, folks, thank you so much for your story submissions. We've had story submissions from Margot, from Brandon, from Tom. I want to thank all you guys for sending in your dumb crime, stupid criminal stories. We're going to read them throughout the show here. And I won't name them individually as to who sent what, but I want to thank the gang for sending in their stories. Ted Kaczynski this week, the Unabomber.
I heard
and Talia knows. Yeah. That's right.
Talia knows.
Yep. Ted Kaczynski decided that it was the end, my friend. That it was.
He decided to mail it in, didn't he? No pun intended.
Well, I get. Well, that's a good pun, actually, to mail it in.
It was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What I don't like right now with watching all the Ted Kaczynski stuff is they have pictures of him, but they're still showing that stupid sketch that someone had back in 94 with the hood and the glasses. You know what I mean? Like, we have actual pictures of him, people.
Looking like Michael Jackson.
We know who he is now.
Yeah. What was disturbing to me was, and I think you'll agree with me on this, after the news came out that he had expired in jail, I'm putting it lightly, there was a hashtag RIP King.
What?
On Twitter. I don't know if you saw this or not, Bruiser.
I haven't seen that. I don't understand why we're calling him king. He was a horrible, horrible human being that killed innocent people.
Right. But there was a groundswell, and this was amongst younger people that were getting behind Kaczynski and his manifesto.
So I'm guessing it wasn't people that were alive like you and I during the time period of him of terror, because they only know him after he was captured. He was on the run for 17 years, I think it was. So for 17 years, he had the country in fear because he was mailing bombs to people, and it was random people too.
Yeah.
It wasn't, So what I'm assuming is that these are some young kids that don't do their research. They read his manifesto or off to, okay, if you take it at face value, he has some points. You go into the actual man himself and the twisted thinking he actually had and how he went about doing it, he's not a king.
No, but here's where, when you look back at history with different colored glasses, these aren't rose-colored glasses, they're shit-colored glasses. When you look back at it from a perspective when you weren't in the present or in the know, or even let's just put it this way, you weren't old enough to know.
Right.
You look back on it through a different tinge and you see something nobody else saw at the time. And I'll tell you what exactly it is that these people who are backing Kaczynski saw, and it's going to kind of turn your stomach a little bit.
It already is, I have to admit it. I don't like that they're putting him on a pedestal.
The things that certain people online on Twitter were citing were the fact that, okay, he was a professor at one time. All right, what has that got to do with the price of tea in China? They were pointing out in his manifesto that he went after not only the left wing, but the right wing. And, okay, so he attacked political parties. Fine. Yeah. They also went after the fact that he also believed that eventually machines and AI and robots would take over our jobs and we'd become subservient to technology, that he was some sort of genius. No. Anybody could have picked that out. George Orwell picked that out of the ether and wrote a novel on it.
Yep.
That doesn't make Ted Kaczynski a genius. That just means he read a book. The fact of the matter is the man killed over it. That makes him evil.
If they're using that terms of why he's a genius, and the guys who wrote WALL-E for, was it Disney or Pixar or whatever, they must be geniuses too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's just like you said, Orwell, right, and all that. It's the same thing.
Yeah. So I have a story here which is going to reverse that R.I.P. King hashtag and take the genius right out of the Unabomber. And here it is. The Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, previously tried to hang himself with his underwear. There's your genius.
Because he got caught.
Well, at least I wonder if it was tighty whities or boxers they tried to hang himself with. I'm just saying. Unabomber Ted Kaczynski previously tried to kill himself in jail by hanging himself by his own underwear. You heard it here first, folks. The infamous convict who killed himself at the federal medical prison in, I believe this is it Butner, North Carolina?
I believe that's it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And on Saturday, carried out a 17-year bombing spree that killed 3 and injured 23 others before he was caught and sentenced to more than 4 life terms in May of 1998. But months before he even went to trial, Kaczynski tried to commit suicide after a failed bid to fire his lawyers. He appeared in court hours afterward with the red marks from his hanging attempt still around his neck. Do you think it said fruit of the loom right near his Adam's apple?
He had the grape right there.
Yeah, a little grape right there.
Wouldn't it be great if he had the apple next to the Adam's apple?
Oh, it would be. It'd be a strategically placed mark, that's for sure. Then Sacramento County Undersheriff Lou Blanes told reporters that the night before the court hearing, January 9th of 1998, Kaczynski attempted to hang himself with his own underwear. That's according to the Tampa Bay Times. Yeah, there's your brother.
Another coward's way of doing it. That's how all those guys are. They're cowards.
Yeah.
We have in society today, we like to idolize some of the evil. When the Dahmer series came out, you had the group that was idolizing him, the Manson people. Obviously here, the Rip King with Kaczynski. what they don't realize, these people are cowards.
Through and through.
Yeah. They're not geniuses. They're cowards and they're insane.
Yeah.
And they don't care about anything but themselves.
Yep. He couldn't stand up to anybody and kill him. He bombed him.
Exactly.
Coward's way out. The suicide attempt was confirmed by family lawyer Anthony, I believe it is Biscali, who was representing Kaczynski's brother David, the man who turned him in after realizing his sibling was the infamous Unabomber. The suicide attempt put the Harvard-educated math professor turned hermit on suicide watch. During the hearing, the suspect could be seen ignoring David and their mother, who were seated only a few feet from him. There was no mention of Kaczynski's suicide attempt in court. The failed attempt occurred after the court dismissed his request to fire his defense lawyers when they refused to toss out plans to claim Kaczynski was suffering from a mental illness.
Yep. I remember all that. I didn't know he tried to kill himself, but I remember that's why he tried to fire them. And he wanted to represent himself, and it was a whole rigmarole.
Yeah. More than 25 years later, on Saturday, officials said they found the 81-year-old Kaczynski unresponsive inside his cell around 12:30 a.m. He was revived with CPR but pronounced dead at a hospital later that morning, with multiple sources telling the Associated Press that he committed suicide. The Chicago native had been moved from the federal Supermax prison in Florence, Colorado, to a medical facility in North Carolina in December of 2021 because of ill health after being diagnosed with late-stage cancer. Kaczynski was an Ivy League educated math professor who left society to live in a cabin in Montana. He's believed to have set off his first homemade explosive at Chicago University in 1978. He confessed to carrying out 16 bombings between 1978 and 1995 and was captured only after his brother recognized his handwriting in the infamous Unabomber Manifesto, which is a 35,000-word anti-technology and anti-leftist writing that warned about mankind's end from rapidly evolving tech, which is what everybody on Twitter, I shouldn't say everybody, but the small group of people on Twitter were celebrating. After a massive manhunt, Kaczynski was captured by police in his small plywood and tar paper cabin in the woods outside of Lincoln, Montana.
See, there's another thing to think. Okay, you think he's this genius and he's this mad genius. He was living in cardboard and a tarp.
Yeah.
He wasn't even living off the land correctly.
No. Mm-mm.
You know, he was a seriously deranged man, is what he was.
Yeah. I wouldn't go so far as to say mentally ill. I don't think he was mentally ill at all. I just think he was ill-equipped.
Yeah. I think something that happened in his life he wasn't happy about, and he could blame the government and machines, you know, and threw a little temper tantrum and went in the woods and decided he's going to blow people up because he was right. You know what I mean? Like,
and let's face it, in the 1980s, technology wasn't anything like it is today. So,
could you imagine if he was doing the bombings in today's period where every week we have a story of how AI does something?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, at that point, he's just a crackpot was all he was. Yeah. He was a dangerous crackpot, but he was a crackpot.
Yeah.
And to sit here in this day and time and say he was a visionary. No, he was stupid is what he was.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what he was. So for the kids out there who think he was some sort of visionary or some sort of enlightened person, no, he was a crackpot.
No, do your research.
Yep.
I'm a big fan. I love doing research on serial killers and people like him, but I don't do it because I want to sensationalize them. I do it because I don't think that way. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious as to why. Because I remember when Dahmer was caught, I was only like 13. And in my head, I was fascinated, not because of who he was. I was fascinated of how could he do that? Like where, because in my brain, I can't process that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I wanted to know why. And that's what led me on the path of doing research into all these different people. And when you boil it down, all these people, there's something off with them, and they're not geniuses. They're not, rebellion. Mm-hmm. They're not against anything. They're narcissists who have a means to get what they want.
Yeah.
And that means was not the correct way.
Right. We move on. Corey Richins Googled luxury prisons for the rich after her husband's alleged murder. Speaking of not too bright, Utah mom Corey Richens, who allegedly killed her husband and wrote a children's book about grief, good God, reportedly conducted extensive online research after his death, including about luxury prisons for the rich and how long it takes life insurance companies to pay.
How to say you're guilty without saying you're guilty.
Well, you know, what's interesting, again, in the interview we did with Stuart Gibbon, right before the segment, Stuart even said people seem to think that if they search something on their phone or their computer, that if you just delete your cookies and delete everything off your browser history, it's all okay. They'll never find it. You'd be surprised what forensic computer experts can find.
Oh, yeah.
It's all there.
You always hear lately nowadays when they catch someone that killed, the way they can prove it is, their Google search history.
Yeah, it's all there. It never goes away.
Like the guy that murdered his wife Googled how, does Home Depot carry, and he listed all the stuff that he used to kill her.
Yeah.
Hey, let's show him your shopping list.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Luxury prisons for the rich, and how long does it take life insurance companies to pay? The 33-year-old mother of three who was charged with murder after she allegedly slipped 5 times the lethal dose of fentanyl into a Moscow Mule. I don't know if you've ever had that mixture before, Bruiser, at the bar, but let's just say...
I always get my Moscow Mules hold the fentanyl.
Yes, yeah, always hold the fentanyl. She mixed that up for her husband, Eric Richens, in March of 2022. She had a Google history that included disturbing searches, according to KTVX-TV. She scoured the internet for information about Utah's penitentiaries, as well as luxury prisons for the rich in America. In case there was RICO laws that would have sent her anywhere but Utah, I guess. Richens researched whether investigators can see deleted messages, how often insurance companies take to pay claimants, whether police can force you to take a lie detector test, and if the cause of death can be changed on a death certificate. Boy, she was thorough.
She was going through every box, huh?
Yeah, she's checking them all off. The suspect also viewed an article titled Signs of Being Under Federal Investigation and another headline, Delay in Claim Payment for Death Certificate with Pending Cause of Death. That according to the report. Her other searches included the queries, is Noxalone similar to heroin? What is considered non-natural manner of death? And Corey Richens, net worth. So she wanted to know how much she was worth.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Well, I suppose if you're...
And then for some reason, she visited my OnlyFans. She came to our website a couple times.
Weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she's looking for a sugar daddy, I guess.
She wants to get into that rich prison.
That's right. Richens, who penned a tearjerker kids book about coping with loss titled Are You With Me? Not if you're going to kill me, you ain't with me.
So she's taken from the OJ theory. If I get away with this, I'm going to write a book. If I did it.
If I did it, Are You With Me? By Corey Richens. Also reportedly accessed an article about how to hire someone to write a book for you. She didn't even write her own book?
No, she got a ghostwriter?
Jesus.
Check that ghostwriter. They might be an accomplice.
She's fake all the way around. She also searched multiple times about whether her family had donated to the Summit County Police Department, according to the outlet. Her more mundane searches reportedly included how to undo microblading. What kind of doctor was Dr. Pepper? And Lil Nas X married. Boy, she's barking up every wrong tree, isn't she?
She is. Look at her.
She's a fountain of misknowledge. And I'm not talking about a beauty contest misknowledge. I'm talking about,
What I get out of this is she's sitting at her computer. Mm-hmm. She's like, I got to get rid of my husband. Let's look up, okay, this is how I can kill him. Oh, this Lil Nas X song, it's bumping. Oh, yeah, I like this.
I wonder if he's into me.
Yeah, let's see, okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, let me take a swig here. Dr. Pepper, ooh. I wonder if, let me look that up.
I wonder if Dr. Pepper's still around and if he's into me. Lil Nas X, do you think I'm his type? I really don't like this microblade job they did. Do you think I can undo it? Yeah.
I just need to know how to grow my hair back.
Yeah, she's not bright. One expert told KTVX that Richens may have been trying to understand the process and how long the investigation could take. I don't think it's significant, or it's insignificant, criminal defense attorney Clayton Sims told the outlet. I think her state of mind, what she's looking at, what she's researching, could be important, but certainly I think there's nothing there that indicates guilt. Sure.
Yeah, because everyday people are looking that up.
Yeah. Richens allegedly bought 4 life insurance policies on Eric's life, totaling $2 million without his knowledge, years before the alleged murder.
Yeah. How do you know you're going to murder your husband without letting your husband know you're going to murder them?
Yeah. He was on borrowed time.
He was. The minute that she got approved for those life insurance policies.
Yep. He should have.
And she tried the legal way. Yeah, you want a bungee jump? Go ahead. You want to skydive? Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
You want to get behind the wheel of a motorcycle and do Le Mans? Go ahead.
Want to learn how to fly plane? Go ahead, honey. Reach for the sky. Reach way high for the sky.
You want to be a grade school student in America? Go ahead. Too far. Sorry.
Prosecutors said Richens took out a $250,000 home equity line of credit and spent it, stole about $134,000 from Eric's business, withdrew $100,000 from his bank accounts, and spent more than $30,000 with his credit cards. I don't think she had enough money on hand.
Yeah. She trying to bankrupt him before he died? Like, what's up with this?
Oh, yeah. Run it all up and then run for the hills.
Like, killing him isn't enough?
I guess not.
I'm going to destroy your credit.
But here's the kicker, Bruiser. He learned about his wife's secret financial decisions in September of 2020 and met with a divorce lawyer. She did it all before he was dead. And estate planner the next month. That, according to court documents, she did it all before he was dead. Eric had recently cut his wife out of his will, and then she cut him off from his life. Yeah. And then he changed his life insurance policy as he sought a divorce. She allegedly tried to name herself the beneficiary of that policy, but was caught, and he reversed the move, adding back his sister to the plan. Both sides of the family have been fighting over Eric's $3.6 million estate. His sisters told police that Richens had previously tried to poison him, including on a trip to Greece. He had reportedly warned his family that if anything happened to him, she was to blame. That's a direct quote, that according to court records. Eric also had reason to believe his wife carried out a lengthy affair during their marriage, that according to family reps. Richens allegedly poisoned him a final time between the night of March 3rd and early March 4th of 2022. She told investigators they had celebrated plans to purchase a $2 million home, but investigators later learned that she had placed 2 $900 orders for fentanyl pills from a drug dealer. Richens is charged with first-degree aggravated murder, multiple counts of second-degree possession of a controlled substance with intent to distribute. Holy cow.
I was, no offense, so I was home, he's still letting her make stuff for him. Like,
right?
If someone tries to poison me the first time, guess what? You're not being left alone with anything that goes in my body.
Right. Yeah. Honey, how about takeout tonight?
Exactly.
How about takeout again? How about takeout a third time? Yeah, she'd never cook again in my house.
No.
Mm-hmm.
And if she went, hey, you want a Moscow Mule? Yeah, I'll make it myself. I got it.
Yep, I got it. I make a good one.
Yep.
Yeah, no open containers anywhere in the house. Another story that came from one of our listeners. Again, thank you so much, gang, for stepping up and sending stories. We greatly appreciate it. This one, right back into the vein of getting rid of a loved one. A woman is accused of dismembering and grilling the remains of her mother. Happy Mother's Day!
Yeah, that brings a whole new meaning to Mother's Day cookout, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. A Maryland woman has been arrested for allegedly murdering her own mother. The Prince George's County Police Department said that 44-year-old Candace Craig has been charged with first and second degree murder in connection with the death of her 71-year-old mother, Margaret Craig. So we didn't have veal.
Did she use Old Bay?
Oh, no, come on. Old Bay.
It's like the seasoning of Maryland.
Let's just say it was aged on the bone.
The mom was crabby. Those were some crab cakes.
Officials said that they received a call to request.
If she smoked, it was smoked meat.
Oh, God, no. Officials said they received a call requesting a welfare check on Margaret. When they arrived at the family's home, Candace opened the door and let officers inside to search the house. When the officers went into the basement, they immediately smelled the odor of decomposition.
So basically, the daughter had gotten used to the smell and thought, oh, yeah, no one's going to notice this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And from all the old cops I've talked to, they say the dead body smell has a unique smell. Like there's no denying dead body smell.
Yeah. After a preliminary investigation, detectives believe that Candace murdered her mother on May 23rd. The next day, she enlisted the help of her 19-year-old daughter, Celia Hardy, to dispose of the remains. Upon conducting a preliminary search of the residence, officers also observed a cover to a chainsaw, cutting utensils, cleaning materials, and blood spatter throughout the basement where the bags of human remains were located. Ew.
She forgot to take something out to the curb.
I guess. Officials believe that the pair used the chainsaw to cut up the remains of Margaret. Then on May 27th, a witness told police that they saw Candace and Celia in the wood line burning what they believed to be human remains. Prosecutors wrote that Celia told investigators that she and her mother attempted to burn her remains on a grill at a fire to the rear of the residence. Oh.
How do you get your daughter to go along with this?
Hey, we're going to go cook up Grandma in the back of the wood line. What do you think? I mean, I know you loved her, but you'll love her even more when we put a light charcoal underneath her.
Like, how does that conversation come up? Like, hi, dear. She was 19, so she's probably in college. Like, hey, how was college? You get classes you want to register for? Oh, by the way, killed Mama. Got to chop her up and burn her. You in?
So when it comes to Grandma, roses, card, wood pellets, or charcoal?
Now, do we use propane or the big green egg?
No. Candace, by the way, has been charged with first and second degree murder. It was so nice they did it twice. While Celia was charged with accessory after the fact. The detectives of the homicide unit will ensure a thorough investigation is conducted and that both suspects are held accountable for their cruel and criminal behavior. That, according to Major David Blazer, Major Blazer over there, the commander of the Major Crimes Division.
Major Blazer investigating the grilling murder.
Major Blazer. I could smell a fire from a mile away. Major Blazer.
I just think he dresses nice.
Oh, God.
That's why he got the name.
Major Blazer. Yeah, he doesn't have a sport coat. He's got a blazer.
Exactly. Yeah. Everywhere he goes.
Everywhere he goes.
Who's that dapper young man? That's Major Blazer of Major Crimes.
Major Crimes.
You should have heard this case he just broke. Oh. It was a real griller.
Oh, God. I should give you one of these.
He tried to grill the grandmother, but she was already there.
Let's move on. We go to the Canadian border, Bruiser, where this sent in, I believe. I'm trying to remember who sent this one in. Well, I told you I couldn't remember from one to the other. It was, I don't think this was Margot's story. I'm trying to remember. A GPS mistake took a 60-year-old driver to the Canadian border where he was arrested with 400 pounds of cannabis and more than $600,000 in his car.
Oops.
Yeah. You don't want to go to the Canadian border loaded for bear.
That GPS is such a narc. Like, come on. Trying to make some money, GPS.
Right? I mean,
you forgot to take the, you can change the settings to have like an English woman, an English man, Darth Vader's a voice. Yeah. He forgot to take narc off.
Right? Yeah. By the way, before they got rid of Samuel L. Jackson last week, I recorded a bunch of stuff.
All right.
Yeah. So I'm going to add it to the button bar here. Just for old time's sake.
We know Samuel's not a narc.
No, he's not. In fact, I want to see if he still works. Are you ready?
Yeah, give it a try.
Hey, Samuel L., tell me a dirty joke.
The Samuel Jackson skill is no longer available. For more help, contact customer service.
That dirty bitch got rid of him.
Let's send her to Canada.
See, it's a murder. Officially now, we've witnessed a murder.
Yeah, she murdered Samuel L.
Yep. That's why it fits in dumb crime, stupid criminals.
Exactly.
Yep. Back to our story. A 60-year-old American driver was arrested last week after he took a wrong turn and ended up at the Canadian border with a huge quantity of cannabis and more than $600,000 cash in his car. I guess the weed business is pretty good these days.
This is why this guy's a stupid criminal. When you're driving up to the Canadian border, you have plenty of opportunities to turn around.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
If I have that much drugs in my car, I'm going to think to myself, we have a lot of drugs in this car. We're not going across that border.
It's just,
and if the GPS says rerouting, the GPS can reroute all it wants.
when you see that big sign that says welcome to Canada, and you see it in the distance, I mean, you don't have to drive right up to it unless you're wearing...
Yeah, it's there.
Yeah,
it's usually really bright, too.
Yeah, I mean, you can whip a shitty and go the other way.
And there's plenty of places to do it. Every border crossing I've done, there's the opportunity to turn around.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Because I've thought about it because I don't like Canada.
Oh, come on now. I mean, we have...
I know we have Canadian listeners. And I apologize to them. I'm just not a fan of Canada.
We have some very fine listeners in Canada.
I know we do.
Yeah. Some
and
really
I appreciate
great
them.
people.
Thank you for listening. I'm not going to visit your country anymore.
Wow. Did I ever tell you I have relatives that founded Quebec?
I think you have when we've gone on about my disdain for our friends to the north.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of partial to it.
Yeah, it's not my cup of tea.
I have another relative that was a star hockey player for the Montreal Canadiens.
See, I like hockey. I like things that come from Canada. I like maple syrup. I like ham.
You're not partial to their beer, though.
God, no. There's no good Canadian beer.
Oh.
Their whiskey's okay. I cannot, and this is where we're going to get hate mail.
Okay.
I do not like Tim Hortons.
Oh, you hurt my heart with that.
But to be fair, I don't like Dunkin' Donuts coffee either. I like the donuts, not the coffee. But Tim Hortons, nope, not for me.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't like the Timbits?
Nope.
I love me some Timbits, mainly because they're named after me. But, I like to grab a box of Timbits, and I like to go up to strange, beautiful women and say, would you like to sample my bits? Other than that,
Yep. Not a fan.
Okay, I guess we can get going with the story here. The Royal Canadian...
Their syrup's good.
Yeah. Yeah. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police said in a news release that Andrew Lee Toppenberg was following GPS coordinates that were entered incorrectly when he mistakenly ended up in the border lineup at Canada's Rainbow Bridge border crossing at Niagara Falls, Ontario. Rainbow Bridge border crossing.
Yeah, I've been there. It's called that because of the rainbow from Niagara Falls.
Niagara Falls over. Yeah.
Yeah.
Toppenberg of Tustin, California, this is explaining a lot, was subject to an inspection because he did not have his passport with him. Of course he didn't.
What? Okay, see, this is just making him sound more stupid. Like, you have a lot of drugs in your car. You don't have the proper paperwork to get into the country. What makes you think? And yes, Canadians are very nice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Their border patrol are very nice men and women.
They'll give you a chance.
But not with that much drugs in your car.
No. Canadian border officials said they found 181 kilograms, or about 399 pounds of cannabis. That's a lot. During the inspection, that was valued from about $269,775 to $539,552, depending on where you buy your pot. They also found more than $600,000 cash in the vehicle. I think there was a party in Canada that night.
Yeah.
I could be wrong. The drugs and the money were located throughout the car, with the cannabis in vacuum-packed containers. Well, that was nice of them. And
I picture them in vacuum-packed containers shaped like a human because it's 400 pounds. So he just made it look like a human. He was also using it to get through the carpool lane.
Let me give one of these.
Oh, come on. You wouldn't, if you had 400 pounds of weed, you wouldn't make it into some sort of man-looking thing and drive through the hub lane on the East Coast or the carpool lane in the Midwest.
And make it look like Mark Henry. God.
So this is my buddy Cheech. Come on, leave him alone.
Oh, no. So the police said the packaging looked like the sort of containers drug dealers or money launderers used, so he didn't even disguise it, which led them to issuing charges against Toppenberg on suspicion of the possession and import of cannabis and the possession of more than $5,000, knowing that all or parts of the proceeds were obtained by a crime. He's not.
So he didn't claim that on his customs card, did he?
No, he didn't. No. Toppenberg appeared in an Ontario court on Monday and remained in custody, according to the news release. Jeff Walters, the director of the Niagara District Operations for Canada's Border Service Agency, said in a statement after he stopped laughing, "The CBSA is extremely proud of the diligence shown by our officers. Their hard work has a profound impact on continually ensuring public safety at our borders." By the way, don't cross with that much weed.
And there's numerous U-turns before our border if you don't have your passport.
Yeah, you can just turn around. It's okay.
Yeah, your GPS will not kill you if you don't go the way that it tells you to go.
Right. Let's move on. A Tennessee woman tries to hire a hitman to kill the wife of a man she met on Match.com. This according to prosecutors.
So a married man was on Match.com. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Prosecutors say Melody Sasser paid for an assassin in Bitcoin on Online Killers Market. That's an actual website. You know, I had asked Stuart Gibbon, speaking of our guest, if there was such a thing as a website that you could go to on the dark web, much like they showed this on Law and Order this past season.
Yeah.
There is a website on the dark web you could go to hire a hitman.
Right.
And you
you and I are talking about, like, we don't know where our first stop would be to hire a hitman.
Yeah. Where you could pay in Bitcoin. Ta-da! Here it is.
We found it. A Tennessee woman is accused of trying to hire a hitman with Bitcoin to kill the wife of a man she met on Match.com. Because, ladies, there's no such thing as no good men out there anymore. The first thing should have been, oh, you're on Match.com, but you're married? Like, don't want to get involved with you.
Well, they didn't say that it wasn't a good match. They just didn't mention that good match had somebody else. That's all. Environmental compliance specialist and avid hiker, 47-year-old Melody Sasser. Some people call her Melody Desperate. Was arrested May 18th for the depraved plot to allegedly murder her romantic rival. I don't think she knew she was a rival.
I don't think so either. No. I don't think she had any idea that her husband was doing that stuff.
Yeah. The names of the victim and her husband are redacted in court papers, but the Daily Beast, which first reported the story, identified the Alabama couple as Jennifer and David Wallace.
And all you got to do is just watch them in court. It's the couple where the woman is hitting the man in the back of the head with her purse.
She's going, you just wait till we get home. You're going to fall.
I can only hit you with this right here. Wait till we get home. I'll show you a hitman.
You wait till you fall in that hog pit and I don't come get you out of it.
I got a Moscow Mule all ready for you.
Sasser met the retired Department of Energy emergency manager and Air Force veteran on Match.com. Boy, that's somebody you don't want to mess with right there.
No.
No. And they became hiking buddies in Knoxville, Tennessee. However, the relationship reportedly soured when he moved to Alabama and told her he was engaged. I think he was a little more than engaged.
Yeah. He went beyond the engagement.
Yeah. It's unclear if Sasser and David Wallace were ever romantically involved. My guess was yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think they did a little bit more than hiking, if you know what I mean. Yeah. I'd say they were on the run a little. But she did not take the news well and drove nearly 5 hours to the couple's Prattville, Alabama home to confront them. This reminds me of the woman who wore the diaper.
Oh, the astronaut?
Yeah. To drive so many. Yeah.
Yep. She's going to show that guy.
Yep. I hope you both fall off a cliff and die, she told them in the fall of 2022, the complaint says. Around the same time, Jennifer found gashes in the side of her car and began receiving a deluge of threatening phone calls. Oh, yeah, she's stable.
Single white female.
Yep. Sasser, using the name Catree or Catree. Yeah, she's stable. Put in a murder for hire order on the dark web's online killers market. I told you this existed.
It's Yelp for killers for hitmen.
Yelp for killers. January 11th, providing Jennifer Wallace's name, address, and a Bitcoin down payment for the $9,750 job.
That's all it cost?
That's it.
Oh.
To have her bumped.
Because then he's definitely coming running back to you.
Yeah.
She gets out of there. He realizes, well, maybe that other girl wasn't as crazy as I thought.
He picks up the old phone and goes, oh, hey, by the way, psycho, my wife's out of the way. Maybe you can come over here and obsess about me more.
Funny thing is, she fell off a cliff.
Yeah, after he told us to fall off a cliff and die. There's a weird coincidence. Should we
take up our hiking again?
Yeah. How would you like me to hike the fuck out of you?
Let's go on that grade 3 trail. Come on.
The quote here is, it needs to seem random or accident or plant drugs. Do not want a long investigation, Catree allegedly wrote in the message that included a photo of the target.
Wow.
Random, accident, or plant drugs. The bizarre site.
No one overdoses on weed, man.
No, it doesn't. No. You got to smoke a whole lot of it. The bizarre site purports to offer hitman for hire type services as well as associated services that at the would-be customer's request, such as hacking, kidnapping, extortion, disfigurement by acid attack, and sexual violence.
Jeez.
Yeah, talk about your smorgasbord.
Yeah.
Sasser, who had worked for the Pilot Flying J truck stop company before her arrest, exchanged several messages with the site's administrator expressing her frustration over the delay. I have waited for 2 months and 11 days and the job is not completed. 2 weeks ago, you said it was being worked on and would be done in a week. The job is still not done, Sasser allegedly griped on March 22nd. So
she's being a Karen about it.
Yes, she's very impatient. 6 days later, she sent another message providing detailed information about Jennifer Wallace's whereabouts. Yesterday, she worked from home and went for a 2-mile walk by herself. She wrote. Boy, she was pissed.
Just give me the gun. I'll do it.
Yeah. Screw the making it look like an accident. Give me the gun. The
administrator's probably like, man, this lady's really bad shit crazy. We got to get the authorities involved.
Yeah, we got to get the police involved on this. She's going to kill us all. A foreign law enforcement agency alerted the Department of Homeland Security's Homeland Security investigations to the assassination scheme on April 27th. HSI notified local police who assigned a detail to protect the couple. Jennifer Wallace told law enforcement that she used a fitness tracking app called Strava, which is likely how Sasser was keeping tabs on her whereabouts. The complaint says that Sasser bought Bitcoin on 4 occasions from a CoinHub ATM then sent to an online killer's market digital wallet. She used her personal cell phone number to complete the transactions.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, that's bad. Sasser has been detained since her arrest. Her attorney did not immediately return a request for comment. Wow.
That's going to be a movie someday.
Yeah.
It's going to be a great comedy.
It's going to be a great comedy. I don't know how funny that is, but...
It's not. That woman has some serious issues.
We're starting to... we'll get to the point in the program where we're gonna get to our Florida man part of the program. We'll warm you up with a story here that took place in Florida and is quite disturbing.
Okay.
According to deputies, a man crashed his car, jumped out the window after an attempted burglary in Sumter County. He did everything but go, nah, 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 nah. A man in Sumter County is in the hospital after officials say he jumped from the second floor of a home that he crashed into and tried to burglarize.
Oh, so he just figured, hey, the car's here. I might as well rob you.
Yeah.
Like, I already committed one crime. Might as well keep going.
Yeah, just keep moving. Residents from Sandalwood condominiums in Wildwood called 911 around 3:54 a.m. on Sunday. Callers told SCSO that the driver of the car was breaking into multiple apartments. Yikes. Sumter County Sheriff's Office identified the driver as 44-year-old Corey Payton. He rammed it twice. This is a direct quote. He came once and then he hit it again. Witness Keith Ketchum said, "It sounded like somebody was trying to break in the house, so I ran into my son's room." Ketchum lives next door.
So, yes, somebody was trying to break into the house.
Yeah. He is grateful his son was not home when the crash happened. He showed WESH2 the impact from the inside of his child's bedroom.
Why did he run into his child's bedroom if he knew his child wasn't home?
I think to get away from the destruction.
Okay.
Yeah. That sounds like the beginning of a Prince song, 1999, I think. To get away from the destruction, he didn't even care. They say 2000 party over, oops, out of time.
I'll go with it.
Yeah, there you go. There is structural damage. Not right now. Somebody's singing 1999 after I gave those lyrics. There is structural damage inside of my house, Ketchum said. You could see like it started to push the windowsill in and everything. Oh, wow. So he could see the house collapsing as he went in with the car. Yeah. The sheriff's SWAT team responded to the scene and found Payton. I came outside to meet law enforcement, and the guy just walked past me. He was all full of blood and ran around the building, took off, and there was just a chase from there, Ketchum said.
You think he came home and went, oh, man, you see all that? I got to get going. See you later.
I don't know who drove into your house, but I got to get out of here.
Man, someone needs to know how to drive.
That's a very Kramer thing to do. Okie dokie, got to get out of here. Deputies say Payton barricaded himself inside of another home on the second floor of the complex. He's accused of breaking in and trying to burglarize it.
Yeah, he's already going to jail.
According to the sheriff's office, Payton then began threatening to shoot deputies, prompting the surrounding apartments to be evacuated. Members of the Sumter County Sheriff's Office crisis negotiations team were able to talk with Payton through a window of that second floor apartment. SCSO says negotiators worked for several hours to get Payton to surrender peacefully. He allegedly jumped out of the window to the ground. Fire rescue crews from the villages were on the scene and able to initiate life-saving measures before Payton was flown to an area hospital. Grateful, I guess, that it wasn't worse, Ketchum said. Nobody physically got hurt except for him. So, it could have been worse.
What a positive attitude.
Yeah. The sheriff's office shared images from the scene and details about the suspect on its social media page. Payton has an extensive criminal history with a total of 139 prior felony charges. That's 139 prior felony charges.
Why is this guy free?
I don't know. Plus, he has 30 total felony convictions.
Seriously, why is this guy free?
That's a good question. Deputies found Peyton's ankle monitor inside the home that he broke into.
Of course he's on an ankle monitor.
Yeah, so he was on home arrest. They say he was on parole for burglary and previously violated it.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, so This isn't his first time.
Let's not let this guy out anymore.
Yeah, an arrest warrant was issued on June 9th. He's facing charges of burglary of an occupied dwelling, burglary to a dwelling, and several counts of criminal mischief. So that, my friend, is a dumb crime and a very, very stupid criminal. There's a picture for you of what it looked like when he ran into the house.
Oh, yeah, he went in there.
Yeah, he got in.
That house, though, is pretty sturdy because, look, it damaged, it really damaged the front of that car.
Oh, yeah.
There's more damage to the car than there is the actual frame of the house.
Yeah, the house is built pretty well. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure. We were talking about hiring a hitman to go after your lover.
Yes.
Who's married. We have another tale of a jealous lover that just can't seem to stand seeing their ex with a new lover.
Oh, well, you know what? They move on. It happens. Sorry it didn't work out with you two. Move on.
But this one couldn't move on. And it let's just say it was an extreme measure of trying to get them apart. You ready for this? This is really stupid. A flight attendant allegedly made a bomb threat to ground their ex and his new lover.
You are not going to enjoy that Mexican vacation you have planned.
You ready for this?
That's supposed to be me going to Costa Rica with you.
Well, this happened in Argentina.
Okay.
A flight attendant for Argentina's national airline allegedly made a bomb threat to prevent her ex-boyfriend and his new lover, both also crew members, from being able to fly together to Miami. Yeah.
That's supposed to be my vacation, not yours.
This is where it gets a little tricky. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
47-year-old Daniela Carbone, a flight attendant for Aerolíneas, I believe it is, Argentina's, was arrested at Ezeiza International Airport in Buenos Aires on May 21st after she allegedly used her daughter's cell phone to send the threat using voice distortion software.
I just picture her doing the old scream with the voice box. Remember when the movie came out, those voice boxes became real famous?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I just picture her holding that up. Do you like scary movies?
Do you like scary movies? Here's the quote from her. The woman,
that's all recorded.
Yeah, the woman was heard saying, "Tell the captain that we planted 3 bombs in Miami. Stop fucking with politics and check the plane because they are going to fly into 1,000 pieces."
Wow.
Wow.
Went political there.
Yeah, she did. All 270 passengers and 12 crew members were evacuated from the Airbus A330-200, which had been scheduled to depart from Miami at 7:35 a.m. Oh, boy.
How pissed are the other people on that plane that were just going there for business or pleasure, but because this jerk's ex is crazy, they have to cancel it and reschedule it?
Right. Carbone was arrested by Airport Aviation Security Police and charged with aggravated coercion, public intimidation, and hindering a public service. 2 iPhones have been seized at her home. Investigators reportedly discovered searches on the device for how to investigate audio. Can you analyze an audio to find out whose voice it is? Activate voice recognition and Aerolíneas Argentinas. So she busted herself. She's accused of making the threat to her ex-boyfriend of 5 years, a flight attendant identified only as Pico, who would not be able to fly to Miami with his new girlfriend, who is also working on his flight. Pico was, or it might be Picho, Picho.
I like Pico de Gallo.
Pico de Gallo. I think it's Picho. Was questioned by authorities before being allowed to return to work and later flew to Miami, where his brother lives. Airline employees told local news outlets that Carbone, a separated mother of one and 25-year veteran of the aviation industry, could not bear being abandoned by Picho for someone younger.
She couldn't handle his midlife crisis.
Yikes. Carbone, who has been suspended without pay, faces 6 years behind bars if convicted of the crimes. The New York Post was not immediately able to reach Aerolíneas Argentinas and airport police for comment. So,
well, at least she got suspended without pay for 6 months.
Yeah, right.
That's the big worry.
So here is Daniela Carbone. She's 47.
She looks like your typical airline stewardess.
Looks like your typical
airline flight attendant.
Flight attendant, correct.
Yep.
There's I think this is a picture of her in happier days. I'm sure. I think she's probably a few years younger in this picture. She's a good-looking woman. Yeah. Good-looking woman. I think. Is this the picture of? Oh no, that's Carbone.
Let's look up Pico de Gallo. Come up.
Pico. Well, this is her in Picho here. Oh no, that's an unidentified man. I'm sorry, that's not Picho. Let's see here. Is there a? There's not a picture of the other woman in Picho. So we can't play Judgy McJudgerton here, which is too bad. But but it's interesting that she got catty in this deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Decided,
but you know what? Got to do what you got to do, right?
You got to shut down the airline.
That was supposed to be her vacation. Damn it! It's not like airlines, on the best up and up right now.
Well, true, I guess. How do you feel about Dippin' Dots?
I like them. I really do.
Do you?
But to me, they're always going to be called space ice cream.
Yeah.
Isn't that what they were in the 70s and 80s? Wasn't it space ice cream? Astronaut ice cream?
Are they? Is it the same thing or is it different?
I couldn't see. This could be a whole Mandela effect right now, but I could have sworn they were the same thing.
Maybe.
But speaking of airports, almost every airport I go into has a Dippin' Dots station. So
yeah, well, they're easy to store. They have a low freeze point. I think that's why you see them.
And I have children, so yeah, I'm a Dippin' Dots connoisseur.
Okay. Well, evidently Dippin' Dots make you dipshit crazy. Because the Dippin' Dots ex-CEO, Scott Fisher, got busted for punching his girlfriend and walking outside naked in a drunken rage, according to one report.
All right. Let's go on this trip.
Yeah, I didn't know that Dippin' Dots put you into a rage. Maybe they'd ought to take them out of airports then, I think. The ex-CEO of Dippin' Dots was reportedly arrested last Tuesday for allegedly attacking his girlfriend and storming outside their Oklahoma home, completely naked in a drunken, fueled rage.
Okay.
I didn't know there was that much stress with Dippin' Dots.
I didn't know that either, but I've partaken normally when I drink a little too much Jack Daniels, my clothes come off and I walk around in a drunken rage, and I don't get into fights or punch anybody, but
you're just mad at the world.
I for some reason, when I get quite a bit of Jack Daniels in me, I remove my clothes and want to fight.
There's not a lot of logic to that. Go ahead. Yep.
Here's the story. I'm in Eldon, Missouri.
Yep.
Training under Harley Race.
Okay.
Now, the only thing to do in Eldon, Missouri is wrestle, drink, do drugs. That's about it.
Okay.
It's a very small town.
Sure.
And on Thursday nights at the bar, they'd always do $1 beer for the wrestlers. Mm-hmm. Or if the Cardinals are playing or Kansas City, it's $1 beer. Mm-hmm. Well, Joe Henning was in town.
Okay.
Because he had trained there too. And Joe and I are real good friends.
Yep.
And we go to the bar with my then girlfriend at the time. And he says, "Oh, cool, $1 beer. That means we can spend some more money on shots." I'm like, awesome. He's like, "You want to do a Henning shot?" It's called a Henning shot. His dad, Kurt, invented it. And it's where you take a Jack Daniels, you shoot it, you gargle it for 10 seconds, and then you swallow it.
Ooh. Okay.
Joe only does it for 5 seconds because he's like, "You're a good guy. We'll do it for 5. Okay, no problem. All I know is the next morning I wake up in my apartment, completely nude, laying on the couch. Completely nude. No recollection of how I got there, what happened. my girlfriend comes walking out. Then girlfriend comes walking out of the bedroom, and I look right away and go, "I'm sorry for whatever I did." She goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I obviously did something because I'm waking up on the couch, butt naked. So I obviously did something to piss you off." She goes, "No, we're fine." I said, "Well, then why am I naked laying on the couch?" She goes, "You don't remember?" I said, "I don't remember a thing." She says, "What is the last thing you remember?" I told her. She goes, "Okay." About an hour after that, they call for bar time. You and Joe convinced the bartender to give you the bottle of Jack. So you guys finished the bottle of Jack. Then you two decide to go in the middle of the street on downtown Eldon, downtown Main Street, and take all your clothes off and challenge anybody that wanted to step up to you guys to a fight. I said, "Really?" She said, "Yep." She said, "Nobody came out." I said, "Really?" She says, "Yeah." So how'd I get home? She goes, "You walked?"
Oh, my
I said,
God.
"I what?" She goes, "Yeah, you walked home." She says, "I came back, an hour later, and you guys were just sitting on the curb laughing, and I followed you to make sure you got home." I said, "Really? Okay." Next thing you know, there's a knock on my door, and I open the door, and there's Joe with a towel wrapped around him, just hungover as all can be, going, "What did we do last night, and are we in trouble?" So my wife, then I meet Mrs. Bruiser, and she knows the story, and I start doing Jack Daniels, and my clothes start coming off, and she's like, "That's it, no more Jack Daniels for you."
I've never felt the need when drinking Jack to take my clothes off.
I do. I blame that damn Henning.
Huh. Yeah.
But I did because of that story.
Huh.
That's how I became friends with Barry Darsow up there in Minnesota.
Yeah. Okay.
Because Kurt's a son of Minnesota.
Yep.
They went to high school together there, and was it Chanhassen? I think it was.
Chanhassen.
Where they went? Yeah. I think that's where they went. I remember, but they were, So when I met Barry, I had a bottle of Jack Daniels. I said, "Let's do a Henning shot." And he looks at me, and I showed him, and he goes, "I haven't drank in 2 years, but my friend, I'm going to drink with you."
Nice. Oh my gosh.
That's why with Jack Daniels, I can relate to this guy minus punching my wife.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously. Yeah.
And I haven't created Dippin' Dots, so.
Well, I wonder if you could do a Dippin' Dots chaser with Jack Daniels.
I'm sure you could. How come there's no alcoholic Dippin' Dots?
That's a good question. Probably because it would turn it to nothing, to mush.
Yeah, but you have alcoholic ice cream.
Right, because the alcohol can be diffused in during the creaming process. Listen to me, good God, that sounds dirty. During the creamery process, you can infuse the alcohol in, but I think Dippin' Dots are all synthetic, aren't they?
Yeah, it's all flash frozen, isn't it?
Yeah, so I don't think you can do that.
I don't know. I got a project for when we get done.
Okay.
On my drive to train the youth of
America.
Wrestling.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So Scott Fisher, who has a history of abuse, was booked on complaints of public intoxication, domestic violence by strangulation, interfering with an emergency call, and indecent exposure, according to court documents obtained by Fox 25. The 43-year-old Fisher allegedly attacked the woman hours after she confronted him about his alcohol abuse, which reportedly escalated over the past several weeks. The girlfriend, whose identity was not revealed in the documents, had reportedly returned from work to their Oklahoma City home and found the former ice cream man intoxicated. And no, it wasn't David Lee Roth either. The pair verbally fought until the magnate took off his clothing and crawled into bed at around 5:45 p.m. Yes, that's 5:45 p.m., right?
You're taking an early night.
Yes. The arguments resumed again about 6 hours later when his partner tried to join him. Now, see, the partner tries to join you at 11:45 p.m. That should be a nice cuddly type time.
How much did he drink? Where 6 hours later, after sleeping, he's still plastered.
Oh, it had to have been the whole bottle.
Yeah, it had to be a whole day thing.
Yeah. That's when Fisher allegedly pulled her by her shirt and grabbed her around her throat until she slapped him away, which she should.
Yeah.
The ex-boss then chased her into their living room, where he threw her over the couch and began punching her in the chest.
Oh, geez.
Jeez, what a nice guy. The girlfriend was then able to call 911 before Fisher allegedly yanked the phone out of her hands in an attempt to end the police report, but cops had already been dispatched and she had escaped the home. When police arrived, they found Fisher standing unsteadily outside the house, completely naked with a blank expression on his face, wearing nothing but a stooped-up stupor. Fisher had a strong odor of an alcoholic beverage and was unsteady on his feet as we walked him to the patrol vehicle, police said. Investigators also found several small droplets of blood on the back of the seat cushions where Fisher is accused of beating his partner. In 2021, the creamery boss admitted to sending an X-rated photo of an ex-girlfriend to her mother as part of a revenge porn campaign against her.
Jeez.
What a nice guy.
Yeah. It's hard to believe that Dippin' Dots came from this deranged mind.
Right. His former girlfriend, Amanda Brown, also accused Fisher of threatening to withhold money from her during their 2-year relationship unless she sent him explicit images, which then he tried to use as blackmail to keep her in line. In her lawsuit, Brown alleged that Fisher had a long history of drinking problems. The ex-CEO was arrested for a DUI in 2018 after crashing into 2 homes in Edmond, Oklahoma. Jeez.
Sorry, I didn't see you there.
This guy is a Nobel Peace Prize winner, isn't he?
It's sad, too, because like I said, think of all your Dippin' Dot memories. It's nothing but good memories.
Well, for
it
you.
Came from this horrible mind.
Fisher did not immediately respond to the New York Post comment or for a comment from the New York Post. It's just, the guy's kind of a POS, isn't he?
Yeah, he is a big time.
Yeah.
I'd say let's boycott Dippin' Dots, but they're pretty good.
They are, yeah.
And he's the ex-CEO, so he has nothing to do with the
he's got
Dippin' Dots for
nothing to do with the company anymore. So, yeah. All right, I believe we're now coming to the Florida Man section of our program. The next 5 stories have everything to do with Florida Man.
Okay.
All right. So, Florida Man. We start out first with a young Florida man who hasn't been ingratiated into the ways of Florida Man, but he's learning, and he's learning fast. We start with a man who was arrested after breaking into a Florida theme park, hopping into an alligator enclosure, and filming video for social media. Florida Man.
Florida Man.
A man is accused of breaking into a Florida theme park, jumping into an alligator enclosure, and filming a video for social media, a dangerous stunt that authorities say led to his arrest. Florida
Man. At least he only got arrested and not eaten.
And not losing a body part?
Yeah.
Yeah. 20-year-old Jacob Percival, that's a colorful last name, ran into police in Tampa Bay after he hopped a fence to enter Busch Gardens theme park illegally on June 1st. He and 2 others went to the park's alligator enclosure, which is outfitted with 2 layers of metal fencing. Dear God. Authorities say Percival entered the enclosure while one of the people with him recorded him. Always a bad idea. Always a bad idea. Onlookers can be seen in a video posted to social media showing Percival inside the enclosure, with some shouting at him to get out and that it was dangerous to get that close to the reptiles. Footage of the incident went viral online.
Of course it did. It's got to be an idiot.
Yep. Percival can be heard saying in a clip cited by CNN affiliate WBBH, this is what he said. "Another wild Karen, crikey!"
What does that even mean?
It does. I don't know what it means.
This guy needs to get a job.
Yeah, he does. It is unclear whether Percival has legal representation. He's probably going to need it. Authorities say he posted a video of the incident to social media. No video of the incident currently appears on social media accounts appearing to belong to Percival. Tampa police say leads from social media helped investigators identify and arrest Percival.
Your body image doesn't change between real life and social media. Like, they're going to find you. If it's illegal, they will find you.
Oh, yes. He was taken into custody Monday on charges of theft of services, trespassing, and burglary of an occupied structure. That, according to the release from police in the Hillsborough County Jail's website. Percival was released on how much bond, Bruiser, on Tuesday?
$25,000.
Nah, you can go lower than that.
$5,000.
A little higher.
$7,300.
You're close. $8,500.
Okay.
Yeah, for messing with the alligators. It is unclear whether the two other people who police say snuck into the theme park with Percival will face charges. The Tampa Police Department did not immediately respond to an inquiry on
Well,
that.
they should. They snuck in too, even though they didn't go in the alligator enclosure.
It is trespassing. There's Jacob right there.
Jacob, get a job.
He looks wet behind the ears, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's a young man.
Yeah. You're still a young man.
He looks like the lead vampire in Twilight. I don't remember his name. Edward, is that it?
Yeah, Edward Cullen. He looks like Batman.
Yeah, but not like, because there he doesn't have the straight hair like he is when he's Batman. He has the curly hair like he does when he's Twilight.
Yeah.
What's the guy's name? I don't remember his name.
Yeah. It is what it is.
We know who we're talking
Sparkly dude. Yeah.
Not the brooding one, the sparkling one.
Yeah, the sparkly one. We continue. Oh, Florida man. Oh, Florida man. This one is a little too close to home for me.
Okay.
A Florida man almost loses his leg to a flesh-eating disease after getting bitten in a family brawl.
Okay. Who bit him? And do they need to get checked out?
Well, that's the thing, right?
Yeah. Like I was hoping that you'd tie it in with I think it was on Supernatural News when we talked about the flesh-eating seaweed.
Oh yeah,
coming in Florida. You know, you're that we had that story. So okay, he stepped in that. And that's how he got it. Nope. Someone in his family needs to get checked out.
That's right. Donnie Adams said he was breaking up a family fight when a relative bit him. He has since recovered from the life-threatening infection. Oh, dear God, I'm looking at video of it. It's grossing me out. A Florida man almost lost his leg and could have died from a rare flesh-eating bacterial infection, which developed after he was bitten in the thigh during a family fight. Donnie Adams, a 53-year-old funeral assistant from the Tampa suburb of Riverview, went to the emergency room in mid-February to treat a bump the size of a dollar coin on his upper left thigh. He was sent home with a tetanus shot and antibiotics, but the injury got worse over the next few days, becoming red, swollen, and painful to the touch. His thigh almost looked like an orange peel because of the swelling that was underneath it. Dr. Fritz Brink, a wound care specialist at HCA Florida Healthcare, who treated Adams, told NBC News. By day 3, the leg was swollen. It felt very warm, and I had problems with mobility and everything, Adams said. Brink said Adams told him that he sustained the bite while breaking up a family altercation. He pulled them off of each other, and in the process, he got bit, Brink said. Shortly afterwards, he became a zombie. I'm kidding. The wounds.
Or he became allergic to sunlight and garlic and crosses.
Yep, exactly.
Started sparkling during the day.
Yeah. The wound's appearance matched Adams' account, he added. When I saw him in the hospital, you could still see the bite marks on his thigh, Brink said. It made teeth marks. I was very convinced that he was telling a true story. He said he rushed Adams to the operating room at HCA Florida Northside Hospital in St. Petersburg on February 19th. Adams underwent a second surgery several days later, then was released from the hospital around the second week of March. I knew it was serious then after I got a tetanus shot, Adams said, then added, I had no imagination that it would be anything serious like this. That serious.
Yeah.
Adams,
how come no one's gotten the family member that bit him?
Well, we'll continue.
Okay.
Adams declined to say what sparked the family dust up or identify which relative bit him. Family is everything, and sometimes things go down in families, he said. I'm a man of faith. People can be forgiven, and that's the way I feel about that. It was a family event that went sour between two people, and even though I got in the middle of it and I got injured, it doesn't mean that I'm going to hate my family over this. Adams said he was likely only a day or two from needing an amputation.
Okay, you can love your family all you want, but if one of your families is carrying a flesh-eating disease in their mouth, it needs to be reported.
He said, I would have lost my leg if I would have waited to next day based on how the infection was growing in that region, he said. It was a quiet storm. No, the Quiet Storm is actually a radio program where they play like, the Isley Brothers and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Relaxing.
Yeah, it's nice and relaxing. Kind of sexy, Flesh-eating disease or necrotizing fasciitis is a life-threatening condition that can be caused by a variety of different strains of bacteria, including group A strep and other bacteria found in water, dirt, or saliva. The bacteria can enter the body through a break in the skin, such as a cut, scrape, burn, insect bite, or open wound. From there, it invades and kills the tissue under the skin that surrounds the muscles, nerves, fat, and blood vessels. The bacteria spreads quickly, so an infection can develop within hours or a few days. More often than not, it's a normal bacteria that lives on our skin, and they utilized a weak point from an injury as an entryway, Brink said. The human mouth contains hundreds of different bacteria, and it's rare for doctors to see patients with a human bite, let alone one that develops into a life-threatening infection, Brink added. He said he usually sees a case of necrotizing fasciitis once a month or every other month. Brink's theory about Adams' case is that he likely developed a non-serious infection that traveled deeper into his soft tissue until it reached his muscle and was able to just take off. Brink estimated that he removed about 60% of the skin on the front of Adams' left thigh to stop the infection from spreading. From there, he said, he used a vacuum device to close the wound, which healed in about 3 months. I do expect him to make a full recovery, Brink said. He's still going to feel that scar tissue on his thigh for a while to come, but his skin is completely healed. Adams said he used a walker to get around for about a month after his release from the hospital. He's now walking pain-free and without a limp. I don't think I could give you a 40-yard sprint today, but maybe 20, he went on to say.
Tell us what family member protects society.
Be a snitch. Turn them in.
One of your families is a zombie.
That's right. That's right. 3 more stories and Florida man.
Oh, Florida man.
Let's run them down, shall we? A Riverview man was caught racing on I-275 with an infant, a toddler, sleeping in his car.
Aw, don't be doing that.
Too fast, too furious. Too fucking little to be sleeping in the back of the car while we're racing. That's what I'm saying. I had to come up with another F there. A man from Riverview was accused of child neglect, among other crimes, after he was allegedly caught racing down I-275 on Thursday. At 1:30 p.m., it was the middle of the afternoon. Yeah.
Well,
Florida.
he couldn't afford daycare. He doesn't have a job.
I guess not. A Florida Highway Patrol officer spotted 2 vehicles that appeared to be racing each other on the Howard Franklin Bridge. In an arrest report, the trooper said a BMW and an Infiniti were speeding down the interstate in clear competition with each other, passing through traffic. The trooper pulled over the Infiniti just south of Ulmerton Road, while the BMW continued driving at an extremely high rate of speed. Oh, goody. The driver, identified as 24-year-old DeMarcus Glover, was immediately detained. According to the arrest report, the trooper reported the smell of fresh marijuana wafting through the vehicle. It's just like Krispy Kreme's fresh marijuana.
That's not mine. It's the kids. How do you think I got him to sleep?
That's right. He doesn't need a pacifier. Pass him the blunt. Where 11-month-old and 3-year-old children were asleep in the back seat.
How do you think that challenge came up? You think he pulled up to a red light and then the Infiniti pulled up? Vroom, vroom. The guy went, oh, yeah, vroom, vroom. What are you up to today? I know, I'm running errands with the kids. Want to race? Hell yeah. Kids, hit this and buckle up.
And hey, you over there, keep your engine down. I got kids sleeping in the back.
The weed just kicked in, man. Calm down.
Calm down. The toddler was reportedly not sitting in a child seat either.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so you just kind of free floating like you're in space, kid. Hold on to something. There's got to be an oh shit bar back there for you.
If we crash, you'll fit through a window.
That's right. An empty firearm case was spotted in plain sight on the floorboard because,
Oh, God.
The kids got to ride shotgun literally. And an unloaded handgun was later allegedly found underneath the passenger seat, readily accessible. Because, daddy's got to be strapped.
Little Billy's going to need to shoot somebody.
That's right. The arrest report stated 13.6 grams of a leafy substance, and it was green and leafy, assumed to be marijuana, was allegedly found in 3 separate baggies inside the vehicle. Glover was arrested and booked into the Pinellas County Jail on charges of child neglect without bodily harm. That's important. Racing on the highway, possession of drug paraphernalia, and possession of marijuana, which is a misdemeanor. Jail records indicate Glover has bonded out. Of course, no word on if the kids bonded out or not.
The kids are still sitting there.
My daddy's going to come get me soon.
You boys need to learn a lesson. I tell you, hide that handgun, you hide that handgun.
That's right.
You won that race.
You think one of the kids could have put the handgun or, could have not crotched it, but could have put it in the ass of their diaper. Yeah.
Could have diapered it.
Yeah. Hold this work for daddy.
The cops smell if the kid shit his pants. No, it smells like gun oil, though.
Yeah. You might want to eat more greens.
But not the greens your dad's giving you to sleep.
Right. Yeah. Different greens. 2 more stories in the old Florida, man. They just keep getting weirder and weirder.
I love Florida. Thank you, Florida.
Yeah. There's such a rich source of weird stories. When was the last time you had a problem with your neighbor?
Haven't. Knock on wood. I have great neighbors.
Do you have to go back to Wisconsin to have a problem with a neighbor?
No, we were the problem neighbors back there.
Oh, good.
I think we were. I don't know. The one neighbors back there, their 2 teenage daughters decided to suntan the front lawn. And I said, I won't be showing up. So I put on my Batman tighty whities, grabbed my Walking Dead comics, went out in the front yard and sat down and baby oil lotioned myself up and blasted some Skinner. This has got video of it. She's laughing so hard. What I didn't know is the house next to us on the other side had an open house that day. People were looking to buy it. So I think we were the bad neighbors.
Probably, yeah. Well, in honor of your Walking Dead comic escapade
Catching up on some reading.
Yeah.
Tanning. It was for wrestling.
Exactly. Here's hoping that your neighbors weren't thinking of doing this. Literally holding a shotgun. A woman pulled a weapon on a Deltona tree trimmer.
Jeez.
Yeah, they're a little hardcore down there. Yeah. Edward LeBron recounts a harrowing experience on the job that happened to him last week. A tree cutting crew in Deltona was threatened with a weapon last Thursday. The owner of Tree Timber, Edward LeBron, says cutting trees is already a dangerous business, but unpredictable homeowners are cause for extra concern. Did
she forget she called them?
Oh, no. This is the neighbor next door.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. They throw a tantrum just for anything, LeBron said. After disregarding consistent yelling from the neighbor of a home they were servicing Thursday, LeBron began to pay attention.
Okay.
Of course he would. Because she came over and said, "You drop one more branch from that tree and I'll drop you."
Wow.
Yeah.
This got intense quick.
Yeah, it did. It escalated from 1 to 10 in no time flat.
Yeah.
Yeah. He could not believe what he had just heard. I took a closer look at her. The woman was literally holding a shotgun. I was like, Jesus Christ, LeBron said. I was terrified. He said she continued to complain about sawdust getting in her yard.
Oh, come on.
Yep.
It's outdoors. It'll blow away.
Yep. She want to kill Mr. Tree Timber herself for freaking sawdust. That's insane, LeBron said. Yeah. When law enforcement arrived on the scene, he decided not to press charges.
Why not? Take the criminal. Like, she's insane. She's clearly insane.
Yeah, yeah. He added that things like this happen way too often. So
Oh, gee.
this isn't an isolated incident.
No, he needs to write a book.
When he posted about it on Facebook, other tree cutting business owners chimed in about their experiences. People being chased by battle axes, ninja stars being thrown at people. People will throw nails in their trucks and pop their tires, LeBron said. In high-tension situations like this, LeBron's crew always tries to de-escalate the situation and walk away. At the end of the day, he said he wants to make it home to his wife and kids.
Why all the hate for the tree trimmers?
I don't know.
They're just making the neighborhood look great.
Not only that, but they're essential. When a tree gets too tall or it gets diseased, you need a tree trimmer. A lot of us can't do this work.
No, and if your tree gets struck by lightning, they have to come in and they fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a couple out here the other day trimming some trees, and I actually walked towards today. I'm like, you come over here, lop off some of these branches because I don't have the tools for it.
Right. Not only not have the tools, but there's a proper way to bring down a tree so you don't do property damage.
Yeah. Trust me, I have a hole in my front yard where they tried to remove the stump of a tree, and it didn't work out 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
So these guys know what they're doing.
Yeah, it's a science.
It is. So yeah,
why I don't get all the hate? I really don't.
I don't either. I don't get it at all. It may be a small nuisance to you, but it's not worth pulling a shotgun over.
Well, and the guys by us, they came out and knocked on everyone's doors the day before and said, hey, we're going to be out here about 7 a.m. using chainsaws. We're just giving you a heads up.
Yeah.
They did it the night before to all the neighbors.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, now I can plan for it,
Right. Our final story is the biggest evil upon all evils, Bruiser. This person deserves to go straight to hell.
They spill beer.
No, I didn't think of that one, but that person deserves to go straight to hell as well.
Yeah. Don't waste beer.
There's that. Yeah. This is even worse. What's the most egregious thing a food delivery person's ever done to you?
Deliver somebody else's food.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I would try to order from Chili's or Buffalo Wild Wings, and I'd get like half my order.
Yeah, that's
every
common for us from those two places.
Yeah, I never get my food.
I don't do B-dubs anymore because of that.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't order from there anymore. We're talking about Grubhub here. Okay. They fired their delivery driver in this case after the delivery driver was accused of stealing a customer's kitten off her front porch.
Oh, what a dick.
Right?
That's not your tip.
That's right. That's not your tip.
Do I have to start leaving that in the notes? Ziggy and Talia are not your tip?
Yes. Or Bruiser.
Yeah. No, they can't take any of them.
Right. A Grubhub delivery driver lost his job after a customer claimed he stole her kitten. The driver was captured on a security camera taking it from her front porch in San Antonio, Texas. I'm sorry, I thought this was a Florida story. It's San Antonio, Texas for the last one. But the Grubhub driver was probably from Florida.
He was. We're going to say he was.
Yeah. Grubhub told Insider that it terminated the driver after investigating the incident. Grubhub customers said a delivery driver stole a kitten from her front porch after she ordered food from the app. The customer, Amanda Scoggins, told San Antonio news outlet Ken's 5 that she ordered food from Grubhub from a local restaurant. The San Antonio Police Department told Insider that the driver arrived at the customer's house to deliver food and took a baby kitten without their consent. Officers were dispatched to her home after she reported a theft. Scoggins told Ken's 5 that she cares for the kitten named Smudge, along with 2 others with her neighbor. The kitten's mother is a feral cat, and it turned up on her front porch about 6 weeks ago when they started caring for them, Scoggins told the CBS affiliate. My neighbor said, oh, by the way, the driver took your kitten. I was like, I'm sorry, what? Scoggins told Ken's 5. She added, I looked over at the cats outside, and sure enough, there was 1, 2, and no 3.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. A spokesperson for Grubhub told Insider, following our investigation into this incident, we've now terminated this driver. The driver was captured on video taking a white kitten on the customer's neighbor's security camera before he's seen walking off. Scoggins gave the video to the police and to Grubhub. A similar incident occurred in Weatherford, Texas in 2019 when an Amazon delivery driver was accused of stealing a couple's dog.
Well, just because they're out doesn't mean they're free to take.
Right. The dog's name was RJ and had escaped from the home when its owners were out, and the police later found it listed on Craigslist for $100. The driver was...
The guy wasn't even going to take care of it. He was selling it. He was trying to flip the dog.
Yeah, he tried to flip the dog, which is a great idea for a TV show, Flip the Dog. Yeah. The driver was subsequently charged with theft and was fired as a driver for a third-party Amazon courier. So there you go. Dastardly pet stealers is how we end today's dumb crimes and stupid criminals.
Yeah, unless it says free kittens, just leave it alone.
Yeah, it's not yours. Keep your hands off the pussy. That's all I got to say about that. So there you go. Bruiser, what you got going on this weekend?
I am in Mooresville, North Carolina at the Mooresville High School on Saturday. I'm in a tag team match where me and AJ Kazana, who's part of the NWA, are wrestling against a guy formerly known as Gunner, or he is Gunner, formerly known as Jackson Riker, I think, in his tag team partner.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so we're going to be mixing it up. That's on the 17th. Then on the 18th, I actually am having a virtual meet and greet.
Oh.
Yep. So I know it's Father's Day, but I'm going to be doing a virtual meet and greet where you can come on and say hello. They'll have things for sale. I'll be auctioning off some ring-worn gear and whatnot. And, yeah, it's just going to be fun to interact. So if any of the listeners want it, I can send you the info. Otherwise, check my socials, and I'll have all the info on there, too.
I know we have your information for not this weekend, but next weekend up on darknessradioshow.com, the big show on the 25th.
Yep. Real excited for that.
Yep, that's up on our events page at darknessradioshow.com. You can click on and get tickets from darknessradioshow.com if you don't remember where Bruiser's socials are. I'm going to try and grab...
Well, on that show, too, because that might possibly be my last match ever, you can watch on Title Match Network.
Oh,
it's streaming. All their shows are streaming, but Title Match Network, they're real good guys, and they're streaming it. So I'm telling them, my parents will watch, and my brother and sister, because I don't know. I'm not saying it's my last match. I'm just preparing and letting everybody know if you want to, it's your last chance to see me for a while. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
But so you'll be able to watch it on Title Match Network. It's AML Wrestling.
Yeah. So tune in, folks, on pay-per-view. You'll be able to see Bruiser before he goes to surgery. Have that one match reuniting with Brian Malonis in tag team action. So there you go.
Yeah. Mama and Papa Bruiser are flying in. I'm trying to see if Papa Bruiser at least stop in and say hello.
Yeah.
On the podcast. Yeah. They'll be here they're going to be here for almost 2 weeks.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's have them on.
No matter how old you get, you're still a child of your parents. And when it was my dad this time, when he found out date for surgery, they booked their flights and now they're coming in. So
nice.
And I even told him, I'm going to have to record with Tim. He's like, that's fine. Maybe I'll peek in. I'm like, okay. Yeah. Maybe we'll have him tell some jail stories or something.
Absolutely. That'd be fun. Let's have him on. Let's have him on.
He's got a lot of funny ones. He's got some serious ones, but he's got a lot of funny ones too. Because he did it for 20-some years. So
very cool. Let's have him on then.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. This week, tomorrow, Supernatural News, and then Wednesday, and then Thursday. Thursday we have Alex Matsuo on. We'll be talking about Women of the Paranormal. That's her new book, which pays homage to the different women in the paranormal from the beginning of the paranormal all the way through current day. So
nice. There's a lot of strong women in the paranormal field.
Yes, there are.
A lot of strong women.
And she covers the gamut, so we're going to talk to her on Thursday. So, yeah, good week this week.
Yeah. Very exciting.
Yes. So that is this week on Darkness Radio. So there you go. So we'll wrap it up here. For Beer City Bruiser, I'm Tim Dennis. Thank you so much for tuning in today for True Crime Tuesday. I want to thank my guest, Stuart Gibbon. Again, the book is Catching a Killer, a reference guide to murder investigation, past and present. We encourage you to go out and get that book. We'll see you tomorrow, folks, for Supernatural News on Darkness Radio. And thank you so much for tuning in today to the best in true crime podcasting. This has been True Crime Tuesday.